small town just outside of Windsor, which is also really close to Detroit. So I was diagnosed when I was 7 months old. My biggest thing with exercise so far has been triathlon, running, cycling. I was a competitive swimmer and a lifeguard, and right now my big thing is dog agility. Who knew? So I'm going to go ahead, let the panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start with Josh. So yeah.
Okay, so my name is Josh. I am 33. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at birth in a long time ago, back in 1987. I live in Cardiff, well, between Cardiff and London in the UK.
Wonderful. And then, so we'll go to Jared from there.
I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was roughly about two and a half. Originally born in Florida. Mom brought me up to New York, where I grew up till I was about 20, 22. And then I moved out to Denver, where I am now doing aircraft fueling and bodybuilding and becoming a personal trainer and certified nutritionist.
Super cool. From there, we'll go to Nick. Nick Talbot.
Hi, Nick Talbot, born in the UK. I'm ancient, so I'm 44. And we didn't have testing at birth when I was born. And so it took me, I almost died a couple of times before I was diagnosed at about 12. My parents, and apparently I was given a few years left to live, but my parents only told me that when I turned 40, so a few years ago. And I'm still angry at them that they made me carry on going to high school despite that prediction.
So from there, we'll go to Teena.
Hi guys, happy Saturday. My name is Teena Mobley. I am 25 years old. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I was misdiagnosed with chronic asthma, but I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at the age of 10, which is definitely later in life. And yeah, I am a CF advocate and entrepreneur, and I ran D1 track all throughout my college years, and I am super excited to be here today with you guys.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have everybody here today. I know I'm very excited to be moderating this and to be learning more about the disease which I have and just understanding the possibilities of CF and people with CF. So we're going to start off with a couple questions. We're going to start with Josh. So the first question we have is, what was it like lifting 1 million kilos in under 24 hours to become a world record holder?
Pretty hard. I basically trained for probably about 12 months before. I think it's really important to say that I've trained all my life. You know, exercise was such a big thing for me. My parents really pushed it on me. I was fortunate enough at the age of 2 to be flown to Texas, in Dallas in Texas, to meet Dr. Bob Kramer, who was one of the top CF pediatric doctors over there in the States at the time. And he basically told my parents to just run my legs off, get me into exercise, and basically just until he throws up. And then when he does throw up, pick him up and do it again. So I've always trained to high intensity. I've competed at national level in multiple sports throughout my childhood. But I wanted to do a world record, really to raise awareness for CF, but to really show what was possible for someone with CF. And I know, we're surrounded by lots of these incredible people who are with us today, for sort of doing incredible feats and showing ultimately children and parents of young kids with CF what is possible for their future. And so I wanted to do a world record, and the previous world record was 475,000 kilos in 24 hours. And I thought, well, I could break it and become a world record holder, but it didn't really have a ring to it. So I thought, well, why not double it and add a bit more and get to 1 million? Because lifting 1 million kilos in 24 hours sounded pretty cool. But yeah, it was painful. The training was sort of 6-7 hours of weightlifting every day. I was allowed 1 day off in every 10 days. And when I broke the world record in 10 hours. And averaged 755 kilos every minute for 22 hours and 11 minutes. So safe to say it took me a couple of weeks to learn how to walk again, because my legs were in bits. I tore my pec from my chest as well, which was pretty painful. But yeah, I'm glad to say that a CF person, i.e. me, still holds that world record. 3 people have tried it since and failed. But yeah, my dream is to see someone else with CF in the future break that world record and grab it if they're crazy enough to try it.
That is absolutely incredible. I know for myself, and I'm sure with many other people, it was just insane watching that. It was just, I don't even understand how you did it. So just amazing job.
Neither do I. I don't anymore. It's a distant memory.
I'm sure the pain is gone though, hopefully. So that's
just
good.
about.
So we'll go to Jared from here, just so we can get everyone talking. So Jared, what were some of the toughest challenges when you first started your fitness journey?
For me, some of them was learning how to breathe when I was doing the weightlifting, because I'll be honest, growing up, I was not a very active kid. I was stay home, play video games, just eat junk food and kind of be a bum. So learning how to breathe while I was exercising and lifting weights was big for me. But I want to say the toughest thing was kind of putting my ego aside, because I'd held myself in a place where probably you shouldn't do it all. And I had to keep reminding myself that every day I was going to be going into a gym with these massive dudes, bodybuilders, that have been doing this for years. And I was going to be lucky to bench press just the barbell. I had to leave my ego at the door every day and just remember that I was going in there and that I had a mission to accomplish. And that even though I wasn't going to be the biggest dude and I wasn't going to be doing anything crazy, that I was doing it for myself and no one else. And I just had to keep telling myself, keep going. Don't worry about what others are thinking. What they think doesn't really matter. And it's more about, focusing on yourself and becoming a better version, regardless of what anyone else was, what's going on in their head. So a lot of it was just the mental challenge I had against myself.
Definitely. And I think that's a big part of CF. And I think a lot of us have experienced that because, we face challenges that are different than the everyday person that doesn't have CF. So it's really important that, although we do compete against other people, that a lot of it's a big fight against ourselves and, making ourselves better. So that's really cool that's how you started off. So yeah. From there, we'll go to Nick. So Nick, you do mountaineering, which I don't even think I've been to a mountain, so very foreign concept. But what challenges do CFers face while mountaineering?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in the middle of nowhere, so the only thing you could do was outdoor stuff. And whilst we don't really have mountains in the UK, we've got hills, and I'd spent a lot of time in the hills because there's nothing else to do, quite frankly. And then over the years, I just started going higher and higher and seeing how far I could go. But what I noticed is when you get to really high altitude, so let's say 18,000 feet, 20,000 feet, things change a lot. So you have to learn things like how to cough, which sounds strange, but you get a lot of dry air. It's quite hard to breathe. And so thanks you for the cough then. Well timed. Yeah, I learned that the hard way, actually, because on one expedition I was on, I'd always just coughed and coughed whenever I wanted without thinking about it. But what I learned up there is you have to actually make sure you can stop to breathe every now and then because the air is so thin. It's about a third of it at sea level. But I also ripped all the muscles down the side of one of my lungs and had to finish that expedition then because I'd been coughing too much. So there's things like that. Then there's, you have to get yourself fitter than everyone else that's going as well, because ultimately you really at normal altitude I don't tend to notice too much the difference in lung capacity, but when you go into high altitude, people that are high altitude athletes will often have a lung capacity that's equivalent to say 120%, and so you're trying to compensate for that because every bit higher you go it gets harder and harder. And so my aim was always to get fitter than they would be when they're going on the mountain to try and help compensate. And for a CF person, that'll turn you into an average person on the mountain, as opposed to someone that's leading. And the other thing is about training, you have to make sure you keep eating a lot because when you're on the mountain, you lose your appetite. The acidity in your stomach changes, and so your body will start to eat itself, and you're trying to get the right balance of it eating fat and not your muscle. And so when you're doing training, I had to pay a lot of attention to making sure I was taking in calories every 25 minutes, because I didn't want to lose any weight. If anything, when you go to the mountains, you want to have muscle, but you also want to have fat that you can burn off. And the difference in weight between where I am now today and sometimes when I was mountaineering is about 20 kilos, which is about 50 pounds. And so in terms of the amount you can lose on the mountain, so there's quite a lot you need to pay attention to that you just wouldn't think of.
Yeah, that's, I struggle on the day-to-day thinking when I want to eat my lunch, so I can't imagine every 25 minutes needing a snack, although that does sound fun. Eating is fun. So from there, we'll go to Teena. So Teena does track and field, D1 athlete, absolutely incredible. And one thing with CF is, motivation to keep doing sports. It's really important. So what kept you motivated during, to exercise and to play sports?
Right. So definitely what kept me motivated was definitely, my family, my friends, my team, my coaches, the nurses and doctors, of course. And then as you guys know, the doctors always say, people with cystic fibrosis, our capabilities are fairly limited. So if you know me, I'm very hard-headed. So if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to go out there and do it. I'm very also competitive. And, us being, having cystic fibrosis, we have to train twice as hard as everyone else. So it's like, I'm out there, but, I know I have to work harder. So I think that's what really, gave me that motivational drive to like push throughout the years, and train hard. So yeah, that's definitely what kept me motivated for sure.
Yeah. When someone tells you you can't do something, always go do it better. That's
always do it. Always
the best way to go do it. It's the best way to do it.
Exactly. Right.
So we're going to go back to Josh just for a second here. More than a second, but you know what I mean. So
I'll keep it brief.
You only get 2 seconds, so really short. So similar to what we just asked Teena, but what inspires you to complete such huge challenges?
I think for me, Jared touched on it earlier about, your personal challenge with yourself is really important. And, whilst, yes, I would go after world records and try and beat and compete with other people who perhaps don't have cystic fibrosis, I think for me personally, you have to just really focus on yourself more than anything and making sure that you are the best version that you can possibly be. And that motivates me quite a lot. Is I'm always striving to be better every day, whatever I'm doing. But also I think, I've done, like a lot of these people who are on here today, done a lot of charity work in my time. And I have my own charity for children in the UK with CF to get them into sport and exercise. And, we have some incredible video messages from these children and these parents from all over the world in just how we've impacted them in their lives. And I think if that doesn't motivate you, then, really nothing will, to be perfectly honest. And I think for me, being an adult with CF, I don't know about anyone else here, but I find it really important that, we've managed to live so many years with this disease. And I think it's almost like our duty to sort of like pass on our lessons, our life lessons to these children and the young families growing up to just to help as many people as we can, really. So I think that's motivated me to do these stupid, crazy, bonkers things. And I'm sure, over the next few years, I'll probably sort of step down and let someone else take the reins of the charity.
That's amazing. I mean, the impact that your charity has and, how you share your story, especially with kids, it's awe-inspiring, truly, because I know even in Canada and in the US and all over the world that we see this and it's not even coming from anywhere near us. So it's just been such a change in CF lately, especially with all of the social engagement and social interaction. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
So from there, we'll go back to Jared. So with CF, a lot of times when someone says, oh, it must suck to have CF, I think a lot of our response is, no, I've actually done a lot because of it. So looking at your specific situation, what have you accomplished because of CF that you would have never done?
Uh, the biggest thing is inspiring others. You know, I remember growing up, I wanted to be the front and center, you know, spotlight. I wanted to do all these amazing things and really make a difference in the world. Um, but when I was younger, I never viewed CF, like having cystic fibrosis, being a way to do that. I always just imagined being, you know, an actor or something crazy. And growing up now, it's just like, it's crazy that just by being myself, showing people the struggles that I've gone through. I mean, I went from 120 pounds soaking wet at, you know, 6 foot something to 150 in just a few short months of weightlifting, and, you know, just being able to document my journey the entire way. Never would I have imagined that I could have inspired, you know, as many people. And it's truly awesome to me, because as I started to grow into that sort of role, I started seeing the impact I could have. And, you know, we don't, you know, aside from a lot of people here, it's tough with CF and growing up, because we don't have like these really big name actors or, you know, role models to look up to and be like, I want to be like that. And, you know, we're always limiting ourselves because we see normal people doing all these insane things. And we think, oh, well, with my cystic fibrosis, there's very slim chance at best that I can accomplish that. And, you know, showing kids and being that role model for others has been something that I know I could have never done if I didn't have cystic fibrosis. You know, if I didn't go through that struggle, I wouldn't have been able to show people what they're capable of, regardless of what they have and don't have.
Definitely. And I think that's really important. I'm sure everyone in the Zoom would agree, and everyone who's going to watch this after, being able to look up to someone that's doing something with the disease that we have, it opens the gate. And I think it allows kids to say, you know what, I'm not going to strive for something lower because that's what I know I can do. I'm going to strive for something better because I know that's what I want to do and what I'm capable of doing at my best.
Definitely.
So thank you for sharing that message. It's really important to get out there. And I think more and more, the more and more people that get out and start doing, you know, exercise activity, the better it is.
Definitely.
So thank you for that message. From there, we're going to go back to Nick. And, you know, Mount Everest does not seem like an easy task to climb, especially when challenges present themselves that you're not expecting. So how did you survive two of the worst disasters on Mount Everest?
Yeah, with difficulty. It's ironic. I started in 2014 trying Everest, and ironically, the film Everest, which was actually the biggest tragedy ever, was in '96 until that point, and they were on the mountain doing filming in 2014, and then that was the biggest disaster. Actually, I was lucky then because I wasn't on the mountain. There was a big avalanche. Came back the next year because I'm stupid like that, much to my parents' annoyance. And there was, you think lightning will never strike twice, but then there was a massive earthquake that killed, I think it was, I forget how many thousands of people across Nepal. But base camp is usually a pretty safe place, and it's spread out over about a mile, and you have avalanches going off all the time, but they just die at the bottom of the hill. It's no big deal. The danger is when you're on the actual mountain. What was different about this was an earthquake shook a massive piece of snow and ice off a nearby mountain, and that came crashing down, probably dropped about a mile, and that created a bomb blast through the middle of base camp. And unfortunately, I was in the middle of base camp at the time, and came out of my tent, thin layer of clothing, and this thing's coming towards me. It looked like a 300-meter high wall of snow and ice, and it was coming at about 200 miles an hour. And I had about 10 seconds. And so I just turned and ran in the opposite direction. It's just instinct. And I ran. I knew I couldn't outrun it, and I was thinking this is impossible for this to be happening. And it then smashed me to the ground. I got up, smashed me to the ground again, and then actually slowly things started to settle, and it was really hard to breathe. But essentially what had happened is the snow had filled the air. Then you had rocks flying through the air, you had ice axes, you had all sorts of things. And I had a few broken ribs, I had broken thumb, I had cuts and things all over me, but I was lucky, got very lucky. And I got up, and fortunately one of my teammates died in it. Another one broke his leg, and we helped the one with the broken leg get onto some stable ground. And then I was like, I'm getting hypothermia, because I was covered in snow and ice, and one layer of clothing, no boots, nothing. I thought, okay, well, fine. I'll just go to my tent and I'll get in a sleeping bag. I'll warm myself up. And I couldn't, because the whole of base camp was gone. And so it was kind of spread across the mountain. And so I had to go scavenging, and luckily I managed to find the down suit, which you have to go to the top, of one of my friends. Unfortunately, he's really small. And so I had this thing that was down to my elbows and my knees. And but it started to get me a bit warmer. And some other people came back to base camp. They managed to dig up some sleeping bags, and I stabilized. And then we moved a little bit down the mountain. And the doctors basically said, you got broken ribs, you need to keep coughing, because otherwise you can get pneumonia in your lung. And we can't do anything except give you painkillers. And there were no helicopters because there was no line of sight. So there's a snowstorm. And so we had to wait till the next day, and you've got all these aftershocks of mini earthquakes happening. You're thinking, is it going to happen again? And eventually I got flown out the next day down to a village. Same thing with the doctors, can't help you. Got flown down into another village. Then eventually I got flown to Kathmandu. I managed to get out. And I was told, oh, there'll be some medics over there. And there were none. And so I'm there standing in this dirty, bloody outfit, and I've got no money because it's on the side of the mountain somewhere. I've got no mobile phone because that's smashed on the side of the mountain somewhere. And I'm stuck in a foreign city wondering what the hell I'm going to do. And so I had to persuade a taxi driver to take me to a hotel where I didn't have a reservation, and that they would give him money. And thankfully they did give him money. And then the first time in my life at 40 years of age, I called up my parents and I said, Mum, Dad, I need some money. And thankfully they were happy enough to hear from me, wondering where the hell I was, to actually help out in that instance. But yeah, I got very, very lucky. It could have been so much worse. There were about 20 people died in base camp. And so, yeah, I never thought I'd be there for the two worst disasters.
That is, in one word, terrifying. That's incredible how you, one, survived, but two, how you made it through it with such, you were able to handle yourself, which is, I don't know many people who could do that. So that's just incredible.
I don't think you know whether you can until something like that happens to you. But yeah, but I think CF teaches you to be persistent, which is why I then went back for a third year.
Oh my gosh. Oh, people with CF, I mean, you just do it until you can't do it anymore, but that's...
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. I don't know how to follow that, but we will go to Teena now. Exercise is really important for CF. And even when I was younger, it was not stressed in clinic whatsoever. It wasn't stressed by doctors, wasn't stressed by nurses. I know I was told to eat like a fairly unhealthy diet. And then at about 15 years old, my doctors were like, or maybe 10 or 15 years old, my parents like, yeah, exercise is super important. It actually helps a lot. And I'd been enrolled in hockey since I was 4 because Canada, that's all we do. But Teena, with track and field and, other forms of exercise, why is it so important for CF?
First off, let me start off by saying that exercise literally saved my life for sure. And of course helped others definitely. And, exercise is extremely important. It helps your heart and your lungs for sure. And it helps to make it very strong. So, when it comes to exercise, it's not just like, do what works for you, like your body, your body, your limitations, how far you could go, if you can do that extra push-up or not. So it's really about knowing your body. And exercise throughout my life, it takes a lot of, you have to be mentally strong and then also know what you can do. Like, it's not like with exercise, you just don't have to do like, you don't have to do like a mile. Like, you can do other things like swimming, maybe singing. You could do a walk in the park, you know? I know like everyone has, when it comes to CF, it's like different levels. So, you know, over time, as you, for example, me, I'm a track runner. Like, me doing intervals definitely helped me throughout my life, and that's what worked for me. So I'm not a distance runner at all, but what I do, I'm a sprinter and I'm a long jumper. So what I've been doing throughout the years is intervals. So intervals is basically shorter sprints and in a shorter period of time that requires like more huffing and puffing. So that's something that works for me. So, you know, exercise throughout my whole life, it definitely helped make my heart stronger, helped with my breathing, and helped me get through my day and my journey.
Yeah, exercise, and if it's okay, I'm gonna add a little something to that.
Of course.
Yeah. Exercise is, it's helped in more, it helps in more than a physical way. I find, especially with CF, and even talking to my peers without CF, it helps in such an emotional and a mental way as well. I know that for me personally, and I think as well as everyone else with CF that does exercise, it gives you the tools and it gives you strategies to be able to deal with, you know, lung infections or GI problems or, you know, everyday challenges. It gives you the ability and a tool set that you would not get without exercise. So I think that's another component to not just the physical aspects of it, but also the mental and the emotional part of it. That's just my little 2 cents. But
I 100%, yeah, for sure.
awesome. So just moving back to Josh now, did you always want to be a professional athlete? Like, was that always your goal and aspiration?
Yeah, growing up, I wanted to be a footballer, like many, and that's soccer over here in the UK, which is like many millions of children around the world. And back in those days, it wasn't for the money either; it was just for the love of the game. My uncle was the coach for the Manchester United youth team, so he pretty much taught me everything I knew on the pitch. I went semi-pro as a kid, but I wasn't good enough. You know, I can't come up with excuses like a lot of people saying I had a knee injury or anything like that. It was pretty simple. I didn't quite make it. I didn't make the cut, but I always knew that I wanted a career in sport, in exercise. So I came up with sort of my first ever challenge for CF, which was called 24 Hours for CF, which was basically I had to exercise nonstop for 24 hours. I was only allowed 3 2-minute breaks. And only 4 people in the world had done it, and I was aiming to be the 5th. And I suppose I went into training, and I trained really, really hard for that, and I broke the previous record by 2 hours. So essentially, I had to lift 100 tons, cycle 100 miles, row 20 miles, run 10 miles, cross train 10 miles, swim 2 miles, and then do 3,000 sit-ups, 1,000 press-ups, and 1,000 squats. And that was all pretty much sort of like non-stop. And I suppose it was just luck that I was at a charity fundraiser in London not long after I'd completed it, and a company approached me and they wanted to sponsor me as an athlete, and that's how I got into the world of ultra endurance events, really. But I think what I love about ultra endurance events is that it's not just a test of your physical capabilities. It's more of a test on your mental ability and your mental strength. And that's really what drives me. I remember actually speaking to Nick a few years ago, because I did Kilimanjaro when I was 17 for charity. And, after that, I was like, okay, what's bigger than that? And obviously there are lots of mountains in the world that are much bigger than Kilimanjaro. And I spoke to Nick about Everest and his experience there. And it just, those couple of stories that you heard from him earlier, that sort of stuff excites me in a weird way, because I think with some of the stuff that I've done, which is nothing on that level, but when you push yourself to faint and throw up during training for something, and, I did the 1,000,000 kilo world record with a broken hand, and I really pushed myself to a level which I'd never seen before. I'd been to such a dark place during that 24 hours that it actually, in a weird way, excited me to see how far my body was willing to go. And it's quite sadistic, I know, but, I think that's when, you know, realistically looking at events for the future at the age of 33 now, you know, my body can probably only take a few more years of these events. So being a professional athlete now, I'm incredibly lucky to have my sponsors, and you know, I think hopefully they'll hold on to me for another 2 to 3 years so I can finish my career on a high. But, you know, it's tough being an athlete because, you know, there are so many athletes looking for sponsorship and to pay for expeditions and goodness knows what, you know. So I think, you know, in fairness, having cystic fibrosis, I think has actually given me a bit of an advantage over other athletes getting sponsored, because there's a bit more of a story than just this is some other guy wanted to do some other world record. It's actually more sort of appealing to them because there's a really good backstory and we want to raise money for kids with CF. So, you know, for me, I think CF is a bit of an advantage, you know, and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone when I say that. But I definitely think it's given me an advantage when I go in asking people for money.
Yeah, CF has some weird, you know, pros to it. There's definitely cons to CF. I'm not ever going to disagree that. But I think when people are looking at, oh, like people are doing exercise, that's cool. And then when they look at someone doing exercise with, you know, the challenges that that people with CF face, it's incredible. And the activities and the challenges that everybody in this panel has done today, and then the panels that are later on, it really is, it's something out of this world. So, yes. From here, we will go back to Jared. So we talked about this a little bit before, but if we could, you know, it's a really important point if we could go back to it. Mental health can be more difficult than physical health. How do you stay motivated through that?
For a lot for me is, you know, basically my mom and brother and a lot of my immediate family had sacrificed a lot for me to even make it to to 16 years old, because I was a very stubborn child. I didn't want to do anything, you know, I wasn't about it. You know, that I watched my mom do give up numerous things just so I could actually lead a somewhat normal life. And, you know, that helps keep me motivated, because I know that what I'm doing now and you know, becoming and trying to reach my full potential was all because of those sacrifices that those people made. So a lot of it is doing this for them, to make their, you know, their hard work worth all the effort. And I had made a promise with my grandpa before he passed away that I would actually start doing the right things and you know, turning my life around and actually putting forth some effort rather than just being lazy. And then just seeing everyone just cheer and support me from, you know, the sidelines and look up to me has really made it worth, you know, all the time and effort I'm putting in. And it's making it, you know, it helps me keep pushing myself to go farther and farther to places I never thought I would be. And then, you know, I don't always focus on motivation necessarily. I put a lot more thought into, you know, dedication, because motivation can be kind of tough to keep, you know. So dedication is where that comes in, and definitely helps me keep pushing even when I'm not motivated.
For sure. And motivation, you know, it can come from so many sources, but it comes down to you sometimes just getting the work done. So it's really important to sometimes, you know, see the difference between, okay, like I know what motivates me, but I also know I need to do this. I need to get this done. So I think that's really cool that's how you view it. I think it would be really helpful to look at, you know, exercise and activity from that standpoint. So thank you for sharing that. From here, we are going to go back to Nick. I've just learned about mountaineering not too long ago. So I'm a little bit curious, as I'm sure a lot of people are. But what sort of training do you do to be a mountain climber?
Sure, no, thanks for that. Just before I answer that, I just wanted to give a bit of encouragement to Josh, because Josh comes from Wales, which a lot of you may not know. And Josh, I'm sure they put you on their football team. Anyway, in terms of training, I kind of made it up through the years as I was going higher and higher. I learnt by mistakes that I made, and there didn't used to be any particular training formats. But ultimately, I got to a format where I would do a mixture of running up and down hills with 26 kilos, which is about 60 pounds on my back. Also, I live in quite a tall building, so using the stairs in that. I started actually walking, but then I got so bored, and it's such horrible thing, repetitive thing to do in London, where you don't have many hills, that I just decided to speed it up as much as I could. And so I would do that on a local hill. The other thing that I brought in just to liven it up a bit in some of my training is I got a tire, which I would drag along behind me. So I call the tire Horace. And so I literally walk through the streets of London to Greenwich Hill and go up and down that. And it's hilarious watching people's reactions. So some will come and have a bit of a joke, and, you know, I'll say, oh, I'm saving up for the rest of the car, or it's an eco-friendly pet because I don't have to feed it, this sort of thing. Some people will say, you're doing it for charity, can we sponsor you? But my favorite people of all are the ones that see you walking down the street and they just think, okay, there's this crazy guy walking towards me, and I've just got to ignore him. I'm going to pretend that he doesn't exist. And so they're always my favorite ones to make eye contact with. But really, it's something you've got to learn. And I learned the hard way by not training correctly on some mountains. And you have to really put yourself through a brutal regime. So I can empathize a lot with what Josh was saying, because it gets so difficult, it gets so tough to keep pushing yourself and pushing yourself. But I also was trying something that I didn't know whether it would be possible for me to do. I didn't know how high I could get on mountains. I kept trying to go higher and higher. And so I wanted to give myself the best chance to actually do that. And so, yeah, the training is the worst bit. And what you're really worried about as well is that you will pull a muscle or break something just before your expedition. And so you'll have done that 6 months of training. And by the way, I hate training. I love lying on the sofa watching Netflix or something like that. So actually for me, I thought, okay, I'll try Everest, 6 months of hard training beforehand from my normal core fitness. And then to have to go and do it 3 times was a nightmare. But you become addicted. And so I keep doing this stuff in life. And COVID has wrecked a couple of opportunities I wanted to take up this year. But yeah, I think I can empathize a lot with Jared and Josh and Teena in terms of you just become addicted and keep pushing and pushing. And there's no worse competitor than yourself.
Yeah, no, it is fun. It's fun, but it at the same time, it's not fun. But, you know, once you get into doing it so often, it just becomes like you want to keep doing it, even though it does hurt sometimes, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Now, out of my own curiosity, have you ever thought about setting up a live stream for the tire pulling? I'm sure that would bring in quite an audience.
I haven't. To be honest, I only went public with this sort of thing with Everest. So I climbed the 6th highest mountain before that. There's one failed expedition, and I told 4 people. But then I wanted to actually start to do something that would bring money, profile, and give a platform to raise money. So, you know, as I'm sure we all do, speeches will raise a lot of money for different charities around the world. And so I travel for work. And so going to different conferences, a lot of conferences will also give a significant donation to the relevant charity in that country in exchange for that.
That's fantastic. Next time, bring a tire, though.
I bring pictures of the tire, but the footage of the disasters, which is what usually gets people interested.
The tire might not be as interesting as that, but yeah. So to go from there, back to Teena, understanding that, you know, there are different levels of athletics, D1 being, you know, the top tier. what was it like training as a D1 athlete?
Me, overall, just like being a D1 athlete. Well, first off, let me just start off when I was younger, you know, when I found out that I had this breathing illness, right? And again, just going back to, you know, the doctor saying that our capabilities were fairly limited when it came to like, you know, some of the things we wanted to do in life. I knew that one, I wanted to continue sports. So at first I played basketball and then I went into track. And then again, just me being hard-headed, I knew that I wanted to reach that level and push myself to the furthest potential as possible. So thankfully I was able to do that, just training all throughout college. And so also reaching my furthest jump in a long jump, which was 19 feet, 7 inches. So I was ranked nationally there. So that was like a huge accomplishment throughout my whole entire journey in training. I would say it was extremely hard. Again, it's not only the physical aspect, but the mental aspect. It first starts with your mentality. Like, you know, you have to have that mentality to really push through and, you know, develop that motivational drive, you know, to whatever you want to do in life. But trainings, it started with early mornings. I had to train twice a day. So I had to wake up for 6 a.m. weight room, and, you know, later in the day, I would have to train at like 6 or 7 p.m. And on top of that, throughout college, you know, managing 2 to 3 classes a day and also a job. So definitely being an athlete competing at a D1 level, it was not easy at all. And again, it starts with your mentality and wanting to push through. And, you know, what it really comes with is like discipline, consistency, being persistent, and most importantly, faith. So those are the gist of, you know, competing at a high D1 level. And again, it's not going to be hard. What really kept me motivated, like I said before, was, you know, having that support system, your family, the nurses, doctors, because without them, I probably wouldn't have got as far as I wanted to. But, you know, I thank God every day for them.
Sorry, I could not find my unmute button there. So, yeah, being a college student or a university student is not the easiest task, especially especially when you're managing CF and putting athletics on top of that. I cannot imagine being an easy task. I mean, personally, I do marching band. That's not my D1 athletics.
Right.
But that's not the easiest. But I cannot imagine doing, you know, full-fledged teams throughout university. That just seems very hard. But if you have the right mentality and, you know, the right thought process, I'm sure it's very rewarding. So just because we've gone through all of our questions now, it's going to be like a little Q&A session now. So if anybody has any questions, you could type it in the chat. They'll go to Kat. Kat will get them to me. It's a very easy snake system we have going on. But to start it off, I do have a question for you four. So just before, because I haven't received any of the questions yet, so I'm going to start off with my own. So this is directed to everybody. What is it like, or have you had an experience where, you know, a doctor, a support person, maybe a teacher gave you limitations in school, in exercise, in activity, and you had to be like, no, I can actually do this? So if any of you four want to start with that question, feel free.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think throughout everyone's lives with CF, everyone is sort of given certain limitations. I think it always kind of depends on how vocal the other person wants to be about those limitations as well. I had it throughout my life as a junior in the cross-country team, told that I wouldn't make the cross-country team, you know, and I think later on in life, in my adult life, even when I'd proven so many times that, you know, those limitations were not true, I then went and announced that I was going to lift 1 million kilos in 24 hours. And you can imagine how many people thought that would be pretty impossible. Even one of my coaches didn't think that I'd be able to do it. So, but I think it's important for me, you know, to sort of spread around that I think those limitations, they might be limitations just because it either hasn't been done before or that person hasn't seen it been done before. And I think it's about keeping an open mind, and really, to be honest, if anyone's that vocal about giving you a limitation, just don't even listen. I don't even listen to them anymore. And I think that's just come with my age, or whether it's just because I'm incredibly rude to certain people who like to give other people limitations.
And I just wanted to also for Josh, like, again, like, it does like come down to like limitations. So like, again, like, you know, because the doctors or the nurses or other people, they haven't seen it before. It's like, okay, well, has it, you know, can you do it? And that's why they put that limitations on us. And then like with me, like I was able to mask the illness in public because I didn't really want people to know I had the illness, because, you know, when our coaches, they want to treat us like we're fragile. And I'm like, I'm not fragile. I can compete with everyone else, you know, like don't put me down there. I can totally do it. And then when you prove that you can do it, then they're like, okay, well, maybe, you know, she can compete with those other people. So definitely it's about being vocal and, you know, speaking up for yourself and showing people that you can do something, you know?
Yeah. From my experience, I'm a big believer in asking for forgiveness, not permission. My parents' reaction, so when I almost died when I was 12 and was diagnosed with CF, and my parents got told I had a few years left to live, their reaction was actually not to keep me safe at home. They went and bought me a mountain bike and didn't tell me anything about side effects. And you've got to bear in mind, guys, this is pre-internet. Can you imagine? So, you know, no accessible information really. So they didn't set any limitations. It's quite interesting when you start to do big expeditions, because in theory you're supposed to get sign off from things like doctors and what have you. And I knew that would be really difficult. And frankly, doctors aren't qualified to sign off on something like that because most of them don't understand the effects of altitude. And so all I would do is I would ask for a letter that said I'm basically fit and well. And then I would use that as the way to do it. And people do think it's crazy. But I also do things like scuba diving as well. So I think there are lots of limitations that people will put on people with CF. And everyone has a different risk appetite, but I'd encourage people to just push their own personal boundaries, whatever that is. For some people, you know, they've got extremely limited boundaries, but just push your own personal boundaries, whatever they are.
And same goes for me. I mean, I don't know how many times my mom was told by my doctors that I wasn't going to make it past a certain age. And each and every time I made it past it, you know, with no regards to what they had to say. Even when I started doing weightlifting, the doctors were really concerned. They were like, we don't know if this should be the best. Maybe you should focus on this kind of area like cardio and this and that. Because with weightlifting, you're going to have to eat extra amount and it's going to be ridiculous and you might hurt yourself. From the day I first stepped into the gym, I didn't stop for 3 weeks straight. Even on Easter, I was working out at the gym. And they were telling me I had to eat, you know, this absurd amount of food. And I was like, well, then I got to do it. So I started putting down 5,000 calories a day. You know, waking up at 5 or 6 just to eat, then go back to sleep for an hour, go to the gym, go home, eat more, sleep, eat. You know, a lot of the times, and I feel like a lot of us here are like that, as soon as you tell me I can't do it or it's going to be extremely difficult, that's when I have to just ignore you and just keep going and prove you wrong.
I think it's so important, and thank you all for sharing about that. I think it's so important that when someone tells you you can't do something and it's never been done before, and you know, you got to make all these special changes in your life, you got to eat, you know, so much, you got to sleep so much, you got to show them it's got to be done. That's how you got to do it. So keep powering through. So Jared, we are going to ask you another question back to back. We're so kind. We just want to keep hearing your voice. So we just have a question from the chat. So what was the turning point from video games to pushing yourself to this point? And how would you talk to other teens struggling with motivation and dedication?
For me, it was a really dark moment in my life. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't doing any of my medicines or whatever and machines. I had gotten to the point where when we went to the doctors, they wanted me to be admitted into the hospital and start, IV antibiotics and treatment to get me back up to a somewhat livable state. But I had given up. I didn't want to fight anymore. And I remember looking my doctor in the eye with my mom in the room and just telling them I didn't want to do it anymore, and that I just wanted to let go and give up. So they had sent me home with an oxygen tank that day. We had talked about hospice, and I just went to bed, and I woke up the next day, could not breathe whatsoever. Like, it had went from just having a really tough time to it's gonna be the end soon. I started hallucinating. I don't really remember much. I remember calling my mom, but that was really about it. She came and picked me up and brought me to the hospital, and they had said I was within hours. If we had waited any longer, I wouldn't have come back out. And I just remember after that experience and coming so close to death, I just remember that I had made a promise to my grandpa that I was going to actually try. And there had to be something more. I didn't want it to be a struggle all my life. I wanted there to be something interesting, and I wanted to get more out of life. And that's when I just kind of dialed in. I was like, I don't know how or what I'm going to do to get my lung function back and actually live a good life, but I'll figure it out. And then I just looked at exercise and was like, this is possibly my opportunity. And when I started it and started gaining weight, I was like, I was sold. I was hooked. It's like, I don't care how much this is going to hurt. I don't care how sore I'm going to be. I don't care what I have to do. But this is my opportunity to claim my life back and actually enjoy it. And then I apologize, I forgot what the last part of that question was.
No, that's totally fine. It was, trying to find it. How would you talk to other teens struggling with motivation and dedication?
Okay. I would tell them that, like, a lot of it is having to figure out who you are and how you can use those downsides and that negativity, and to fuel it for energy and fuel it for what you want to accomplish out of life. And it might take some time to find that, because for me, it wasn't until I was in complete darkness, in the deepest, darkest corner of my mind, that I finally realized and found what was going to motivate me and provide the dedication to become what I'm doing now.
For sure. And I think that when you get to somewhere where, there's not a lot of places to turn to, that looking at yourself is very important. And I think with the story and the journey that you've shared with us today is really important for people to reflect upon and to look at and to be critical about themselves. Not in a negative way, but in a way that allows them to say, okay, how can I be better today? And how can I be better tomorrow? And how can I, impact myself and impact others? So thank you for sharing that. It was very, very touching.
Thank you.
So this is a question directed to everybody, once again, from the chat. Has anybody had significant lung decline in health? And how have you adjusted to training? And have you had to learn to live with the new normal? So that is directed to everybody.
Okay, I don't mind going first again. I first contracted pseudomonas when I was 15. That was my first hospital stay. I was in for, I think, around 10 days for IVs. That stayed with me for a few years, but I had no more hospital admissions. And then I developed a blockage in my stomach when I was 21, which got out of hand. And I'd already been operated on as a baby for meconium ileus. And at 21, it seemed that I needed emergency surgery again. So I was rushed into surgery and told to pretty much say goodbye to my family. They'd done the scans and everything, and the blockage was so bad that the surgeon gave me less than 10% chance of surviving the night because it was so bad. So yeah, I pretty much said goodbye. And the knock-on effect, obviously I survived. I am with you. This isn't sort of, you're not hallucinating. But the following day, after sort of 7-8 hours of surgery, I woke up with over 100 staples in my stomach and a bag. I had that for about 9 months, and it had a huge impact on not only my life and my goals, but my health, because as many people here will know, that if you have surgery, especially when it's that much of an operation, you've got 100 staples, everything is very tender and it's very hard to move around properly. So for a period of 6 to 8 weeks, I wouldn't say I was bedbound for the whole of that period, but it was incredibly hard to exercise, which was what I normally did. So my lung function dropped considerably from where it was, which was quite high, to I think roughly 70-odd%, which was low for me at that time. And I had to work my socks off to get it back up to where it needed to be for my challenges, really. So it took me some years to get back to what I perceived as being normal. My bag was reversed, and my colostomy bag was reversed after I think around 10 or 11 months, and I had to go back through like what I would call like a transition phase then, where yes, another operation meant that I couldn't necessarily exercise for a month or so for the healing to take place. So yeah, it was very up and down for that period of what, a year to 18 months. And unfortunately, I've been able to get my fitness back. Well, it's better than it's ever been at the age of 33. So I'm incredibly grateful for the exercise, but also for the support that I've had through exercise as well. So it's not like social media can be, that's what I would say to a lot of people as well. Social media can be quite deceiving. Like, whereas a lot of people might put some amazing pictures up looking really fit and healthy, but in the background, there's a story to that, and the hard work that goes into that. It's not all sort of rosy. There are some pretty horrible times that you have to go through. It's just some people choose not to post them, those horrible times, because we don't want to show the bad stuff half the time. We want to show the good stuff and the victories, really. So yeah, I sort of, I'm guilty of that in the past, especially for not sort of sharing my more sort of down moments, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely agree with Josh on that aspect. A lot of people just see, what the success looks like and don't see what it took to get there. And it's very unfortunate. And it's definitely why I try on my social media to show that aspect of when I'm not doing so great. I don't know how many times in my life that the new normal was 30% lung function. And that was, after 2 weeks of, really strong IV antibiotics and doing treatments because I was forced to, because I was in the hospital, and you're not going to tell a pretty nurse no. I've had to adjust to a lot of different normals for myself, at least. But it's exciting in a way to be able to learn more about a new normal. Now that I'm at just under 50%, that's a new normal I've never even imagined or thought I would ever see again.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself lucky because since I was a teenager, I've been relatively stable. In fact, the only time I lost major amount of lung function was I lost 35% once on the drugs trial that I was doing, which I don't think was the desired effect. So I think they stopped the trial not long after that. I have had times when I've taken a couple of weeks out of training, which was really, really frustrating because, you know, I've had colds which have led to coughs, and, you know, you're thinking, well, what's the best thing here? Do I train and try and fight through it, or do I rest and hope it goes away? And then, you know, a couple of weeks later, it still hasn't gone away. And in fact, after a couple of weeks, I started training again. But for me, it's just about trying to push yourself slowly back to where you were, if you can do that, and not beat yourself up about it. But if you've got a long-term challenge that you're going for, a lot of it is luck and timing. And I've had my fair share of bad luck as well. But yeah, it's difficult. But I think I do sympathise a lot that some people with CF have massive, you know, I know someone that had a decline, probably 50-60% in a few months by having picking up something in India, which didn't go down too well. But again, to me, he's an example of keeping on fighting, because they said you're going to have a lung transplant, and so lots of people would have just said okay at that point, but for him it was such a rapid decline, he found it quite hard. And he actually, through exercise, he exercised himself back to a level where they said to him 6 months later, sorry, you're no longer eligible for a lung transplant. And so, but to me, mental strength and health, to me, that demonstrated the importance of that and trying to fight. And sometimes you can't, I accept that. But it also made me think how many people have been in that situation and haven't, you know, tried to fight their way out of it in the way that he did.
For sure. And I asked permission to Kat, so I'm allowed to share a small story. So I think understanding a new normal with CF is not a one-time process. New normal is constantly redefined by your situation, by your environment, by what's happening in your body. And I was fairly lucky. I was pretty healthy until I was about 12 years old. And then I experienced, until I was about 17, I was in the hospital about every 2 weeks. My longest stint on IV was 32 weeks long. That sucks. I don't recommend it. 0 out of 10, not a great experience. But it taught me that you can still do healthy practices and you can still try to be active through challenges in your life. And I think one of the most important lessons I learned was, even though, you know, you might be on IV, even though you're going through medication changes, you know, your lungs, you have weird mucus in places you didn't think you'd get mucus in the base of your lungs. I think it taught me to say, okay, this is the situation I'm in. How am I going to readjust to make myself positive? How am I going to make this a situation in which I can be proud of? And it's very dependent on the situation you're in. But one of my biggest beliefs is, even when I still get sick, is how am I going to make this situation easier for me in the future? So I know if I'm on IV and I just sit down and, you know, for the first week or so, I am totally cool to play Fortnite all week. That's totally fine with me. And play on the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation, whatever. After that, I'm like, okay, maybe a walk would be helpful for when I'm doing treatment tonight and, you know, this glob is not coming up. Maybe I can get it out with a little bit of a walk or a little bit of a run. And I think through that, not only do you increase your exercise tolerance, but you give yourself something to do. I hate when people ask me, like, oh, how's CF? It must really suck having CF. That is one of my least favorite comments, because they're looking at your life and telling you, this is not a good life. You can have a good life with CF. You can change the situation for yourself. It's dependent on how much you're willing to work for it. And I understand completely that it's very hard to do that sometimes. Even going on a walk, getting up, getting a glass of water can sometimes be very helpful. And so adjusting to normal it's a constant process. I don't think I've ever been at one normal. So I think it's a very important thing to be doing, is constantly making yourself better for the next day. So moving on to the next question, and I've asked myself this so many times, it's ridiculous, but how do you manage your sweat and dehydration due to CF. It's a very important topic, especially in high aerobic activity, because managing your sweat and dehydration levels and your salt it's difficult. So if anybody would like to chime in about that, that would be fantastic.
For me, I'm lucky in that I live in quite a cold country, which helps with training. And a lot of my training has been through winter months, which is bad because you have short days, but it's good from a temperature point of view. When it's really hot weather, I've taken additional salt tablets at times, but hydration is really important. And actually, I looked at what some of the Olympic athletes that do endurance, and when they're training, they had the same issue in relation to muscle that I was talking about. And that's where I got the every 25 minutes, taking on board some calories and taking on board hydration particularly. And so I found that worked well for me.
Yeah, I think in some of my events where the first event was pretty bad, because even though I had a nutritionist on board for the event, things just got away with us because we were just aiming for the world record, and it was like we weren't really focused on the salts and anything else. I know I was taking 2 salt tablets every hour, but my nutrition wasn't as good as Nick's. So I think within the 24-hour period, I lost 16 pounds of weight, which was quite considerable for a short space of time. So I learnt the lesson the hard way. I fainted pretty shortly after the finish line. And when I got brought back round, they just gave me loads of sugar, loads of fluid. But now on a typical training day, I think, I'm like Nick, I live in Wales, which is even colder and even wetter than England. So I'm pretty fortunate that I don't, although I sweat, it's not really, really humid and hot. Well, it's certainly not hot here. So yeah, I average around 10 to 12 pints of fluid a day on a normal training day. And then when it comes to an event, it all depends on the environment and everything else. But I know when I'm in a pool, you've got to be really careful, because obviously if you're in water especially, you feel less like water and actually drinking. So you've got to be really on your game there. But it's a lot of trial and error with nutrition.
Yeah, I know when I first started prepping for my bodybuilding competition, my trainer, it was a real guessing game, because my trainer had never really done anything with cystic fibrosis. And this was first time for me as well. So we were just playing a huge guessing game and having to try a whole bunch of different things. We started a pretty strict diet. I want to say about 3 months prior to the competition. Oh God, I dropped weight so quick. I think I dropped 5 pounds within the first 4 days. So we were like, oh, okay, so we can't do that yet. Well, all right, go back to eating a whole bunch, because now we got to make that up and then figure out what to do from there. Getting me back on, I was drinking a gallon of water every day. But there were definitely ups and downs where I had to drink, a Red Bull or something in the morning just to get sugar in me. I was eating an apple, eating a tuna packet, and chugging a bottle of water and Red Bull at like 4 a.m, if not earlier, just so I could do my machines and then walk to the gym and be there at like 4:30. And then, now living in Denver, it is extremely dry here, and I'm at a high elevation. So I'm drinking about a gallon of water every day, and also drinking. I've cut back a lot of my Red Bull, and I've switched over to like Powerade Zero, and throwing a little bit of salt in it, just because that's what the doctors here suggested, and it seems to have helped quite a bit, because like all CF patients, our skin is extremely salty when we sweat, and it's bad out here because, man, retaining water is difficult at the high altitudes.
Definitely. Like getting enough water in is sometimes it's a big challenge. So I know, because I was a lifeguard for 7 years. I've been in a pool environment. I swim competitively since I was like 7. So I've always been, near water, in water. Strangely enough, though, I was never ingesting enough water. You might feel like you're always swimming in it, but you actually don't drink it when you're swimming. So, whoops. And then
Oops.
exactly, about 2 weeks ago, we found out I have DIOS. So my digestive system just doesn't get enough water, and it just leads to blockages, which we didn't know was happening for 5 years. So finally, nice to know that. But I really had to examine the importance of water consumption in the last 3 weeks. So what I've been doing for a couple years now is every morning I take a salt tab, and I find that really helps because I'll get super dehydrated super quick. And then I also, when I started playing, or not playing, I guess, when I started doing triathlon, you don't play triathlon. When I started doing that, I bought myself a 2-liter water bottle, and I would make it my goal. Okay, have one of these in the morning, have one at night, which really helped. It's also very tasty. Like we stopped drinking like any soda, because it's not that great for us. Also, I'm diabetic, so we don't really want that. But I also really learned that G2, or the sugar-free Powerade, has been super helpful. It doesn't raise your sugar, which is a blessed for any type of activity. And the lemon lime flavor is scrumptious. So that is my little water dehydration and salt facts for the day. So this panel is just about to end up, so I'm going to pass things back to Kat. Before I do, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for sharing their stories and their experiences. I know for myself and as well as everybody watching this, it's just been absolutely amazing and very inspiring to hear from you. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much, panelists, moderator. You guys did a fantastic job. And yeah, just really appreciate your stories for those that are here today. And definitely, when we get the recording up, I'm sure we'll be able to reach a lot more people with your inspiring words. So really appreciate it. I will unpin you guys now. You're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to mosey on. So thank you. Thank you. And let's see, and then I will introduce our next, let's see, where are you? There you are. So super happy to introduce Taylor Lewis, who is really the founder of the Pulmonary Performance Institute, which is really exciting for us. We know there's so many different ways in which we can exercise, as we've heard today, and also so many different, just kind of methodologies and philosophies behind that. And we really appreciate that there are people like Taylor out there. So we wanted to kind of share his program with you as well, for those of you looking for someone that can work in personal training that's very specific to CF. So I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity, especially with Attain Health, but just listening to kind of everyone speak about their exercise journey. I think that's the big thing about exercise is it all looks different, right? There's strength training, there's mobility training, there's endurance training, there's different outlets. But unless it's specific for the individual, you lose that connection. And it's very powerful to hear what people's kind of journey with exercise is, because everyone's different. And we can all learn from each other. And so I'm an exercise physiologist and pulmonary researcher. A little bit about my background is I've been in the fitness industry for about 13 years now. I started as a collegiate baseball player that went into strength and conditioning at the college level. I spent 4 or 5 years there before I was introduced to CF. I'm a researcher at Stanford University, so I'm based in Northern California. Approached me because I had some connections through Stanford and people just chatting about exercise and performance. And they had asked me about if I would be willing to potentially write some programs for some of their patients. And I had no idea what CF was at the beginning. So I kind of dove into it. And this was kind of during my graduate degree, and I was looking to do a thesis. And I realized when researching it, because I'm a huge advocate of strength training, that at the time there was limited stuff being done on the power of strength training in pulmonary conditions, especially CF. So then as I started to dive into that, I saw there was a bigger gap of okay, once they leave clinic or once they leave, rehab, then what? And reading the research and some of the personal training certifications, it's talk to a pulmonary specialist. Well, okay, who's that? The doctors, the care center. So then you go to them and it's like, we'll talk to a personal trainer. So there was this massive gap. So 3 years ago, I decided that I shifted my importance of working with collegiate athletes and professional baseball players to opening up a facility that we can really start to close the gap on, education in, pulmonary conditions and CF and what could be potentially, advancing that realm. It first started off as the Cystic Fibrosis Fitness Institute, and then we've shifted to the Pulmonary Performance Institute. But what I really have seen with this is we need more education and awareness. So we started to listen to everyone and say, okay, what works for you? And then also look at the research. So then when people are asked, all right, go do exercise, and it's very general and basic, they have a place like us or Attain Health to go to and be like, okay, this is my situation. These are my goals. This is my environment. How can I formulate something that works best for me? Because that's the big thing, is trying to formulate a progressive program that works best for you. And so what we like to specialize in is setting up those exercise consultations, chatting with the individual and saying, okay, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? What's available to you? And where are we trying to go? Whether it's, improving lung function or just improving aerobic capacity. And then developing a program that can help make that efficient, because it's always about improving exercise capacity. It's always about improving lung function and kind of the end ranges of anything. But we have this potential in the middle where we can really improve on what we already have. We all have this extra potential inside of us. And sometimes it may be just a rib cage or spine mobility drill we need to do. Maybe we need to reset our breathing patterns, or maybe we just need to increase our overall strength. And then that could be the step that's going to take us to that next level. And that's why we really think, talking with people and sitting down with them and creating a specialized program for that individual is going to help people take it to that next level. We also know that not everyone wants to do that, but they want, things are a little bit more focused on, CF. So we developed a program that's called the CF Strong program, that's specifically for people with cystic fibrosis. And the cool thing about this program is it's 5 weeks long. You get to do it at your level. It's based off our exercise platform, so you can access it through a computer, a tablet, or a phone, with videos of every exercise to do and progressions or regressions, because we know everyone's different. Everyone's intensity levels, their experience is going to be different. So we don't want to necessarily pigeonhole this program. So we give people progressions and regressions on how to advance that. But not only that, one of our big goals is just the education component. So when you leave these types of programs, our goal is to not to have to deal with this anymore. Like, you're like, I know what I need to do. I understand my body. Like, I want to be able to write my own program. So creating that autonomy, because that's one big thing, is usually it's, you have the motivation there or this, but it's like, well, what do I do? Or how do I program in a way that's going to be optimized for me? And so that's one big goal for us, is to get to the point where if you want to check in with us, that's phenomenal. But we really want to create that autonomy to allow you to build your own program, because you live in the environment that you live in and the world you live in. And we want to make sure that you can kind of structure that in a way that you don't need necessarily anyone's help. And so this program, we really focus on breathing, resetting breathing, really working your deep core muscles. So this is a foundational program to really build those muscles, and then be able to expand that to then add things later, such as resistance training or really increasing that aerobic capacity. And one cool thing is the Cystic Fibrosis Research Inc., CFRI, has added to this program by, if you use their code CFRI Strong in all capitals, when you go to our website, you get the program for free. Now they have a limited amount that they're willing to give for free, and there's 15 spots left, but it's an opportunity to add something to your toolbox here that could be a potential thing that you can do either right now or a little bit down the road when you finish a program that you're currently on. So our website is pulmonary-performance.com. Our Instagram handle is CF Fitness Institute, and our Facebook is Pulmonary Performance Institute. And you'll be able to access that stuff there, or contact us if you have any questions, because we're also offering, free 30-minute exercise consultations just to help you if you have questions on things you're doing or things you want to change or improve on. So I do really appreciate listening to everyone, in the first course here, because it's just amazing to hear what works for everyone. And especially when you guys are talking about limitations, because when I was reading the research, and the same thing, it's limitations, but how do we know if it's a limitation if it's never been tested? It's just assumed that this can't be done. And I really, admire everyone that's willing to push that envelope when some people are trying to give more conservative information, because the only way we're going to be able to improve this from an exercise standpoint and improve through quality of life is for people to be these warriors and leaders that step up. And I'm willing to take that risk because I truly believe in this. So thank you everyone that has spoken and who really pushes the envelopes here to allow to show that potential for growth in CF and exercise.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your work and being such a great part of this community. We really appreciate having you in it, Taylor.
Thank you.
So yes, thank you all for coming. And for those of you that were in the first round, super excited to have this group of folks as well. We have two amazing folks involved in yoga, which both of you guys have incredible stories, and April, who will introduce herself, but an amazing dance story, and Brandon and Bradley, and yeah, it's just a fantastic group of people. So I'm super excited to hear from all of you, and thank you again for being a part of this, and thanks Emily from Rock CF and Walgreens for helping us make this possible. So I will step back and let Chelsea introduce herself, and then move on to the other folks.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Kat. And if anyone who was here when Taylor was talking with the Pulmonary Performance Institute, I did that during quarantine, and it was amazing. So if you guys are interested, I definitely would recommend that. Give you a little plug on there. But yes, like Kat said, my name is Chelsea. I'm 27 years old with CF. I live in the Caribbean in St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands. So there's a whole story on that, but that's not the point of this talk. I found fitness when I was in college, when I started a really, really rapid decline, got talked to about 3 times about lung transplant, was doing all my medications, couldn't quite figure out why it was happening. So then a friend very humorlessly suggested yoga. And of course, my response was, yeah, let's do an exercise related around breathing. It sounds like a great plan. But against my initial reaction, I started doing yoga and eventually essentially saved my life, like a lot of other people with fitness stories. So I was able to become a yoga teacher after training for a few years. And then now I commit a lot of my time just to teaching fellow people with CF how to use fitness to really go above and beyond what they really think they're able to do, even if they have the initial reaction like me, what in the world, breathing is not my strong suit. But that's enough about me. We'll move over to April Briggs. Would you like to introduce yourself, April?
Yeah, hi there, sorry. And it's Biggs, Chelsea.
Biggs, sorry. Hi.
It's okay, it's a mistake. So I'm April. I am a queer white woman with CF. I am a New Yorker that is currently living on the stolen lands of the Timucuan and the Seminole First Peoples, which is also known as Jacksonville, Florida. COVID pushed me out of New York for a bit. I was diagnosed with CF at 14 months old, and pretty quickly after, I had a fabulous doctor who, this was back in '77, insisted that my mom put me in some sort of regular physical exercise. So she put me in dance, not knowing that that would become the central focus of my entire life. And I feel similarly, Chelsea, that dance over and over saved my life. So I'm very grateful for that decision on the part of my mom and my doctors. So by profession, I am a dancer and a writer.
And I am also a wife. My wife is actually here. Her name's Raven. You can see her little picture down there. And yeah, I'm really excited to be part of this. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, April. Next, we'll hear from Bradley. Oh, Bradley, we can't hear you.
If you have headphones or speakers plugged into whatever computer you're using, try unplugging them because sometimes that can be.
Yeah, I might just have to unplug something that's in the computer and use the computer microphone. Sorry, Bradley. I hate technology when it doesn't want to work.
You might need to go out and come back in. That sometimes helps.
Yeah, you want to try and log out and come back in? Perfect. So while he's coming back in, we'll go over to Brandon. If you could please tell your story.
How's it going? I'm Brandon Miller. I live in just north of Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm an assistant pro at a golf course by trade, but I feel like I spend a lot more time training and doing all my treatments, so I really feel like my profession is almost a CF patient. Yeah, I absolutely love what I do. I love fitness. It's changed my life dramatically. My wife really got me into it. She's absolutely amazing. She's super supportive. I used to cycle more than anything before I met her, and then she got me into running, and then we both got into swimming, and it's just progressed from there. So it's been amazing. It's been life-changing.
Well, where's the wife? We don't see her if she's part of it.
I'm actually at work right now, so I got my coworkers covering for me. So she's back at home. She just got off the Pacific Crest Trail, so she went from Ironman to walking 2,600 miles. But she planned on walking 2,600. She walked about 750, and then the fires got too bad, and she had to come home. So she got home last night.
Well, congratulations to her, and hopefully we'll be able to hear a little bit about that too. But thank you, Brandon. Let's see if Bradley, is your speaker working? Let's see. It's still not quite working. Maybe you could try on your phone. Phone? Okay, we'll try on our phone. And while we're trying, we'll go over to Colleen.
Hi, I'm Colleen. I'm 34. I have CF. I was diagnosed at birth. That was a fun story that my mom likes to tell. I have two older cousins who were diagnosed with CF like a few months before I was born. And I had meconium ileus, which I'm sure a lot of us had. And the doctors started talking about cutting me open. And my mom, being the crazy advocate that she is, was like, no, you just need to give her enzymes. And so they medevaced me to like a bigger city hospital and gave me enzymes. And yeah, so that was that. I'm a yoga teacher. I teach for a lot of organizations that provide it free to people with CF, which we can get in contact about after this. But I was also a sociology teacher before my health got pretty bad. So I just love teaching in general. I was even a ceramics teacher in high school. But so how I came into yoga was pretty goofy. I was in college and I had one of those TV sets that had like a VHS built into the bottom of it. It was silver, and I'm showing that I'm 34 right now because like how millennial is that? How elder millennial is that, I guess I should say. So I bought this VHS tape at the Goodwill that was called Yoga for Dummies, and it was a teacher, Sarah Ivanhoe. She took us through 12 poses that she called the Daily Dozen, and I like committed that to memory and did those 12 poses for a really long time, like years and years of my life. But that was like before I actually started incorporating the spiritual and like mindful part of yoga. And I would say that I've been focused on that for 6 years or so. And that part of it is what made me want to be a yoga teacher. And that part of it is what I will claim saved me or whatever. Really, Simcoe and my parents saved me, but yoga helps. And I think that the mindfulness part of it is what's most important to me. So I'm always happy to share about it with the community because I know we all need help. Sometimes, maybe.
I thank you, Colleen. I completely agree. I think everyone who's in fitness in some way in this group can agree that the physical is only part of it. So thank you for noting that. Let's see if Bradley's able to get on. Oh, I just saw his name. Did he vanish? Are we gonna play Marco Polo? Well, we will try and get Bradley in here and we will get him to introduce himself when he is able. In the meantime, until he's able to get that tech figured out, we don't want to take up anyone's time. So we will start our questions. So we have some questions to ask all of our amazing panelists. So thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone for coming and watching and being a part of this amazing symposium. If you do have any questions like we did earlier in the other panel, please just put it in the chat to Kat, and towards the end, she will relay those to me so we can ask our panelists some questions from the audience. So first, April, what moments in your professional dance career have been most challenging with CF?
I think just given the trajectory of my CF, probably around, I mean, I was symptomatic as a child, but it was mild. I mean, you know, once we got beyond the hump of like when I was diagnosed, because I had a lot of the telltale signs. But once I got stabilized, I was pretty stable until I was about 16 or 17. And then I like really started to have chronic lung infections that started to decrease my lung function. So there was this shift when I went to college. I went to get my bachelor's, my BFA in dance at Florida State. And it's a very rigorous dance program. And my lung function when I entered was probably around 85%. And then by the time I left, it was 60. So I lost, you know, a pretty large percentage over those 4 years. And I also started to have hemoptysis. So there was this big adjustment. And for those that don't know, hemoptysis is coughing up blood. And so there was a big adjustment in terms of my stamina, just general, my weight was starting to drop. So even just the resources I had within my body to dance were growing limited. And so I think that was a really difficult time because I had to reshape for myself what was going to be, what dance would look like for me. Or what I expected of myself and how I needed to adapt. So just, you know, and I think that's a big thing with anyone with chronic illness. We just have to keep adapting as our illnesses progress. So then I moved to New York, and I think, you know, the dance world is, not surprisingly, very ableist. Sorry, that was my cat's tail. There might be a cat coming in and out. So I think moving to New York, I had to meet choreographers that knew about my chronic illness and were willing to work with me. And I met many, but there was some limitations, right? Like I couldn't tour, you know, especially like internationally. I could not tour internationally. I could not just up and leave. I was at that point on and off IV antibiotics every 2 to 3 months, getting tune-ups that would last, like we all know, like most of us know, 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And there just wasn't that flexibility for me to be far from home or far from my CF center. So I danced with a lot of smaller independent choreographers who were more invested in their dancers, which I think was a beautiful thing. I started to get to know people that were really more interested in the people in their company rather than the product of what they were making. And I think that shaped a lot of my own values as a choreographer. And so, yeah, that was, I was in New York from 98 to 2004. Well, I was there till 2010, but in 2004, I had my double lung transplant. So there was, working up to that time, I danced and performed all the way up until my transplant, give or take about 6 to 8 months. Those last 6 to 8 months, I was just swimming. That was really the only activity I could really manage. My lung function had been at about 30, 35% for 4 years maybe. And it was pretty clear my body was, that some things were happening, that I was nearing that critical point. So I'd say those were the biggest challenging periods. And I had to really redefine for myself why I danced, or really get in touch with why I danced and why that was so important to me, from an internal place rather than an external place of what other people expected it to look like. But I think it was invaluable because I learned a lot about why I love to dance, and that I was able to take that and transfer it to my post-transplant life. Yeah. Did I answer that?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you so much, April. No, I think that was great. The one part that I think really stood out to me was, you said adapting to your new normals, and that can either, I think it's both, day by day and also like longitudinally. Sometimes when we go and we get back out after a hospitalization, we're expecting to be able to do what we were doing before, and it can be so frustrating to see where you are now, and just kind of meet yourself at your ability that day. And especially, I know I had to do pulmonary rehab at 21, seeing my other friends out there doing so many other things, and I'm over there with 80-year-olds lifting 1-pound weights. So it's such an interesting way that you have to wrap your mind around how to just honor your body and where you are in your own journey. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So moving on to Brandon with our questions. Brandon, when did you start doing these events of endurance training, and was it always easy, or was it like that challenge at the beginning like I just talked about?
So I started about, I think it was 2010. I started cycling a lot harder than I had ever done before, and was trying to put in more miles. And then I met my wife in 2011, and that's when the racing started. It was very slow going. She was a runner well before I was. So we went for a 3-mile run, and I was at like an 11-minute pace. She was hating every second of it. It was so slow. But I mean, just one foot in front of the other, just keep going. I was so sore the next day, I couldn't even go down any stairs. But I just kept plugging away and plugging on. And then like a year later, we found Emily Schaller in the RockCF Foundation, and I did her half marathon. And we just kept doing that every year for 3 or 4 years. And then it turned into Ragbri, which is a bicycle ride across Iowa. So I did that. That's 550 miles in like 6 days. And then after that, we looked into the Ironman racing. And so we started training really hard for the Ironman racing. First race was Colorado, and that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. It wasn't what I expected, and so it took a lot of energy to keep going, to just kind of turn off all of the noise around me and say, okay, just put one foot in front of the other. Doesn't matter the time. A lot of people don't even get the chance to do this, so just keep going. And it turned into this year. Now I did my fastest half Ironman ever. It was a virtual because, you know, everything got canceled, which was also a challenge in and of itself. But I did it in 6 hours and 26 minutes and 35 seconds, which knocked 20 minutes off of last year's time. And I hope next year to knock another 20 minutes off. And then in 2021 to shoot for a full Ironman, which, yeah, it's good to just keep going and going. And no matter how hard it gets, it can't be any harder than what all of us have to go through every single day.
I completely agree. I think we each know how much of a marathon we each go through every day or every time we have, you know, something that happens out of the blue. I'm not quite a, you know, endurance training athlete, but I did just buy some rollerblades, so I combined, you know, the running and the biking aspect. So I mean, it's okay.
There you go.
I'll be out there one day. But thank you so much, Brandon. Mm-hmm. Hey, can I do that? Can I just combine the two? It's on wheels. It's fine.
Oh yeah, we'll relay it.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you so much, Brandon. We'll move on to Colleen, our yogi. How do you stay motivated, Colleen?
So I'm just going to admit to everyone that we submitted these questions ourselves, and I thought they were going to kind of be like distributed to everybody. And this was really a question that I wanted other people to answer. But my motivation, it's my body. So like if I don't practice for, let's say, a week, my body will start telling me that I need to, because I'll suddenly be like achy in my low back, or like my wrists will be stiff, or even just I'll start being congested because, you know, I'm not consistently breathing deeply, because in my day-to-day, I don't breathe like a yogi. I breathe like a shallow CF breather. So my motivation comes from when I just start to feel like, oh crap, I've fallen off of the taking care of my body, and it's telling me that I need to start doing it again. Kind of like if we go, not that we're all super non-compliant with our medications, but you know, if we go a few days without our inhaled medications, our body will start to be like, what are you doing? But yeah, so when I submitted this question, I didn't think I would be answering it. I wanted to hear from our runners and our dancers and our, I don't know. I wanted to hear from everybody. So maybe we'll open that up at the end. But my motivation really just comes from like tuning into my body and listening to it when it says like, hey girl, get back on track.
I can just start thinking of some questions if you want. Don't worry, I could just spitball them all day. It's fine.
I just.
But no, thank you, Colleen. I completely agree. I know, especially during quarantine, you all start waking up at 8 and then 9 and then 10. And, you know, the more I work out and the more I do, the more energy I have. And which sounds completely counterintuitive, but I think we all can agree with that. When we get into that routine, our body functions at a different level. Our body works a little bit better. So yeah, thank you for that. I do enjoy that motivation question, even if it had to be to you. So we'll move on again. We'll talk to April again. April, how has CF impacted your choreographing life?
I feel like Colleen outed us because now everyone knows we wrote our own questions, which is like really weird. Like the veil has been pulled, but I'll go with it. Wait, what was the question again, Chelsea? Sorry.
How has CF impacted your choreographic life?
Okay. So I think earlier in my life, I danced. Like there were dances that I made that were specifically related to my CF experience. You know, like I think any young artist is usually making work about things that are like right on the surface that have been part of their lived experience. So I think my earlier years were a lot about my chronic illness. And then now I'm more in a space of thinking about my chronic illness as a disability and in the larger disability frame, and disability justice is something I'm like really thinking about a lot right now, and how our chronic illness relates to the larger disability community. So like my work has gone from hyper personal to maybe it's leaning a little bit more, I don't want to use the word political, but I think all art is political. But it's leaning towards like a more like a more collective sense of experiences. Not that I can speak for other people, but I'm interested in understanding how other people experience disability. I think also making choreography, the actual like making of choreography, I feel like a lot of people with chronic illness, because we have to deal with time differently and productivity differently, because we're also navigating disruption, right? There's like a lot of disruption in our lives, you know, like daily, you know, I think we struggle to have full-time jobs, obviously, because we can't predict sometimes what's going to come up and disrupt our lives. So I think about like how I've grown as a choreographer to be able to manage that, you know, where I can think I'm going to have a certain amount of time in the studio making art, but then that changes because I might be ill, or I might have a surgery, or whatever comes up. And I think when I was much like before my transplant, I just to be completely transparent, I had a double lung transplant in 2004, and I have done extremely well. So my life sort of feels like I had like these two CF chapters. I have my pre-transplant CF chapter that was like very intense and difficult. And then I have my post-transplant chapter, which is like a totally different experience of breathing, right? So I have like these two different experiences of my CF body. And I'm very blessed. I know I'm very lucky, I'm very blessed. And I try to stay grateful for that always. So I think just when I'm talking about CF and the things I've learned, I have been blessed to have a chapter in my life post-transplant in which I can operate in a maybe less constrained way, even though transplant is its own disease profile. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that I deal with in that realm too. I think I'm like rambling now, but but I think what I'm trying to say is that as chronically ill people, we adapt. Like, again, we adapt, we have coping mechanisms, ways that we function in the world. Like I've seen that choreographically, I like process a lot quicker because I might not have as much time in the studio. So, you know, I create quicker and process quicker than maybe some of my peers because they have the luxury of that time in the studio that I might not have. In thought.
Thank you so much, April. I think that's a great way to phrase it. You know, we live such a different life with CF or with transplant, and being able to integrate those into how you choreograph things. I think, you know, choreographing is at some level like a storytelling, at least from my perspective. I love watching the storytelling come out on the stage. And I think, you know, you having so many experiences in your life can only be portrayed through such amazing choreographing. So thank you for sharing that. Brandon, why did you put yourself through the type of training that you did?
So I felt the need to really push myself when my wife and I started doing the races at Emily's half marathons, and seeing a couple other patients there and seeing the families of CF patients and seeing how it truly impacted their lives to see such productivity and such passion for CF. And so I wanted to really inspire younger generations to push themselves and do the same thing. And so I wanted to go farther and faster and just keep progressing to show people that it doesn't really matter if your doctors tell you you can't get above 80%, you can show them that you can. I was stuck at 62% for a little while. Actually, it was only 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm bumped up to, mid 90s. And it was mostly through hard work, even before I was up in the mid 80s. And so it's really, really, really changed my life, having the inspiration of other families and other CF patients to push me farther.
I completely agree. I think someone said it in the last panel of, the second you tell a CFer that you can't do something, you're like lighting a fire. So I think all of us can definitely attest to that fact of trying to prove the numbers or the doctors or someone wrong. I remember when I was at the lowest point, my doctors, after all my antibiotics, got me up to a certain point. They're like, well, think 40 might be your new number, sorry. And I was like, yeah, no, it's not. And so I spent the next 2 years busting my butt, and 40 is not my number now. So I think, yeah, don't ever tell a CFer that they can't do something, because you'll create a monster in a good way. But thank you, Brandon. Next up, Colleen. So how did CF impact, Colleen, your 200-hour teacher training? So if people don't know, in order to become a yoga teacher, you have to take a 200-hour intensive training, complete with tests, flows, learning all the anatomy and everything. So how did that impact you and your journey of becoming a yoga teacher, Colleen?
So obviously we just adapted and made the questions more specific to me. Sorry for letting that out the bag, guys. So I had the unique experience of doing a training that spanned 6 months, and it was 1 week in person at the beginning, and then 1 week in person at the end. And then there was a lot of virtual training in between those 2 weeks. A lot of people choose to do all 200 hours all at once over the span of 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, usually at a retreat center, and it's intense. And I just knew at the point that I started my training that that was not for me. That would not have worked out for me. And even if I had managed to make it through, I probably would have been in the hospital afterwards. So I did my first week of the training in July of, I guess it was 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago. I haven't been a teacher that long. And then Trikafta came out in late October, and I started taking it, and it made such a difference in my body. So Symdeko had made a huge difference in my lung function on paper. I was an outlier on Symdeko. I went up nearly 30% points in the FEV. It was amazing for me. It was a huge change, and probably one of the reasons that I actually went to the 200-hour. But the change that Trikafta made for me was in my strength and endurance and my body weight, and just all of the things that you need to be a physically active person seemed to catch up with that improved lung function. So Trikafta didn't really improve my numbers on paper in terms of my lungs, but OMG, it improved everything else. So I went back in December after having been on Trikafta, and people were literally commenting to me are you, what happened? Are you better? Because apparently I looked and sounded so sickly the first week of my training that they were like, what happened to you? You are so much healthier. I was 20 pounds heavier. I could do the yoga without pausing and coughing and doing all of the things that I apparently was very very conspicuous about my CF the first week. And I ended up having to tell all the people in my program, yeah, I started this new drug and it's been amazing. But also that first week was really rough because I had to get up, the days were very structured because it was consolidated into a week and then a week. I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to do my breathing treatments, and then I had to skip out on the afternoon break to do my afternoon breathing treatments, and then of course I was up late at night doing my 3 because I was on Caseton at the time. And I like skipped them the entire second week when I was back there in December, but I got through it and wasn't sick afterwards, and it was really amazing. So the way that CF impacted it for me, like that first week sucked. And honestly, I'm sorry if I'm making anyone feel bad about not having the modulators yet, but yeah, it sucked. I had to do hours more of like being awake and breathing and, you know, just living than all of my peers at the program. And then that second week when I went back, it like didn't affect it at all. So yeah, I was like bringing my Kate Farms shakes into the practices the first week. And then months later at the second week, I was like, okay, I'll just eat what they provide and that'll be enough for me. So yeah, it impacted my training when I was at like an okay point, and then it like hardly impacted my training in December. And I guess like for all of us, that's how our CF will affect our lives, depending on where we are in the progression or regression or recovery of our disease. So
Thank you so much, Colleen. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I remember, you know, when I was super sickly and I was starting to get into exercise, Orkambi was like a year and a half down the road. And I was like, maybe I can just wait till that. And then like a month later, I was like, I can't wait. I'm probably not going to be here when it comes out if I wait. So, you know, with the modulators, they've helped so much, but they're not, you know, not having them isn't a limitation either. You know, anything that you put your mind to, you can really push yourself. Like we said earlier, you know, like Taylor was saying, whether your limits are just because you think of them or have you not even tried it yet, I think are really important. So I remember my yoga teacher training I was on, had my port access, was on IVs, had them in my pocket while I was flowing through my entire, we had to do 8 hours for 3 days in a row. And people are like, is there a fridge anywhere? Can I put this somewhere? And they're like, who is this girl? I'm like, just ignore me. It's fine. Don't worry. But yeah, that was the whole second half of my training as well. So I'm on tri-captain now. So if I could do it now, things would be a little different, but I still got through and it was awesome. So thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you for showing us the two different realms that you experienced during your training. I think that's super interesting. So moving on with our questions, April, what motivates you to remain in the dance field even when CF, like it always will, decides to misbehave?
I mean, I think first and foremost, and I have had, you know, I think because like there's been periods in my life where I had to do physical therapy, or I had to do, like, I also did a yoga teacher training at one point. Like there's been times where I've done things just for the physical part, because the dance has a whole lot of other stuff in with it, right? The virtuosity of it, the art of it, all of that stuff. And sometimes like for me, it doesn't live just in being physical. So in the same token, like I have stayed with it because I love it and I feel like I need it. And it feels like this part of me that when I stop doing it for any period of time, I feel very disoriented, like I'm not like my full self. That said, there are still like, I have some, I have,
You're good.
I have there's some like PTSD from like, you know, my pre-transplant, still trying to dance, like being out of breath. Like I think what Colleen was saying about being conspicuous, like that was very difficult in the field, because I think feeling like there were times where I was standing out, not because I was stellar, but because I was like in the corner coughing or something, you know, or like out of breath, and finding my own way through it. And, you know, I think that part was really hard. And there are still times where like, even though my lung function is in the 90s, in my mind, when I'm dancing, like I'm still scared I'm going to run out of breath. It's like a very, you know, it's like there's an association. So it's like, sometimes it's like a love-hate thing, you know, there's like, I love dance and it's such a part of me. And then there are times where like, I resist it because of that past. But yeah, I think that's I think most of all, I just stay with it because sometimes there's just something that you are meant to do that you have to keep doing, and you have to find your way through it.
Yeah, and I think I bet I don't just speak for myself, but you'll see all your beautiful dance pictures and so many things, and you just think, oh wow, she must be fine. But people don't see, even through pictures or social media, they don't see the struggles that happen, the mental struggles, even if they're not physical. And so thank you so much for speaking about that, because I think that's something that's not spoken about enough. So thank you so much, April. Moving to Brandon. Have you ever wanted to quit and just take it easy for a while, kick back, some Netflix, a little brew, just chill out and forget about endurance training? Oh, you're muted, Brandon.
There we go. There's always been that appeal to just kind of taking it easy for a little bit. Maybe not from treatments, always doing treatments, but taking it easy from the physical aspect. And it just, something always brings me back around. And like in 2000, I think it was 12, I completely ruptured my right ACL and needed reconstructive surgery. And I only had 5 months until Emily's half marathon. And I spent 4 months in physical therapy, going as hard as I could and running whenever I could, and actually still ran it in 2 hours flat. So yeah, I mean, you want to take it easy. It's so much easier to take it easy, but it's so much more rewarding to really push hard and just go for your goals. No matter what happens when you reach it or not, you tried your hardest, and you will see some type of benefit from that. So it's always there to want to take it easy, to want to skip a treatment, to want to, maybe not train today, maybe sleep in a little bit, maybe, Netflix and chill. But it's not as rewarding sometimes. I mean, you do need your off days. You do need your days to let your body recover. Or if you have a flare up or something, you need your strength to handle that. But once you're feeling good and ready to go, sometimes you just need to go as hard as you can.
Yeah, I forget, I'm going to butcher who it is, but the quote is, dying is easy, living is the hard part.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's so true. It's choosing every day to do the harder of the two options is something that, I think we all are somehow warriors because we have to do that every day, whether we want to or not. But then adding the element of fitness is, thank you for putting that in perspective. Everyone does want to stop, but it takes the choice to not.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Brandon, for that.
Mm-hmm.
Colleen, I know you spoke about how you got into the physical part of yoga, but you really, really stuck with it because of the mental and spiritual and more emotional part of it. Do you want to talk about that, or what really drew you into being a part of yoga?
Yeah, and I think that's like perfect to follow what April and Brandon said. I deal with PTSD too, and the idea of everything really being a choice is really empowering and helpful when I'm battling with what my body and mind kind of initially want to do. And so one of my favorite parts of yogic meditation is the practice of living in that space between stimulus and response. So there's something that happens to you. There's a cause to all suffering, right? So something happens, the cause of something happens. And then there's an effect. And what we do when we practice meditation is try to lengthen the space between the cause and effect. And in that space is where we can reduce suffering, or sort of, I forget what the sutra is, and maybe you can chime in, Chelsea, because I know you're really good at the sutras. But there's something about suffering is inevitable, and there's always a cause and effect, but the way we react to it is up to us. And so by lengthening that space and being more mindful about our decisions, we can have a positive impact on the way that we then react. And so we react intentionally rather than from a place of like panic or anxiety or depression or whatever our brain, our monkey mind, so to speak, is telling us what to do. And that is what drew me into the practice, because if I can lengthen that space and tell my scumbag brain to shut up once in a while, that's ideal for me. So yeah, I think that was really relevant after what April and Brandon just said. So thank you for that. But also there's like the ethical principles of yoga. And I'm a person in addiction recovery, and I feel like the ethical principles, which this is like a whole political philosophical thing. The 12 steps actually came from the Vedas, which are the ancient texts that inform yoga. They came over into America through the Transcendentalists, so like your Emerson and Thoreau. And then some guys in Ohio turned them into a recovery program for alcoholics. And just like the parallels between those two things for me are so important, because if any of you are in recovery, it's an ongoing process where you need to keep coming back to your moral compass and your values and your ethics. And so yoga is like a daily way for me to do that. So that's like a personal part of the practice for me. But, you know, we all relate to needing to find our center and make good decisions. So I hope that was a little informative or helpful. I think I went on a little limb, but yeah, thank you for that question. And thank you, April and Brandon, for sharing your answers too.
No, thank you so much, Colleen, especially thank you for opening up and being that vulnerable person and sharing some of your story. I think there are those aspects of our stories that, it might not be the prettiest, and there's something we don't want to share, but sharing them helps people more than keeping them inside. So thank you for sharing that. And so you're telling me I shouldn't be flicking off people who cut me off. I will remember that. Just joking. Yeah, I love you have to come home to yourself before you make a decision. And I think that is such a integral part of yoga. And thank you for bringing that to our attention today. So we have gone through our questions, and this is our period of time to open our questions up to those of you. So we are definitely going to have some questions sent into Kat, but until she gets them over to me. So if you do have a question, send them to Kat. She should be the one who's in your chat box. She will send them to me. But one question that I have for everyone, I'd love to go around just for a second while we get those, is really what sparked your journey? What sparked the need to have a journey of fitness and things like that? And what would you give advice to maybe a teen or someone going through a hard time who are debating becoming, someone who's more into fitness and going down the same journey you have? What would be your advice to them, and kind of what started you on this journey? April?
Well, I think because I said earlier, my mom started me on this journey, so it wasn't really within my control. But obviously, as I got older, it was in my control. But I was thinking about the question, and I think there's something about just knowing that in life, like the reward comes after the work, like that there's work that needs to be done, and in any aspect of our lives, but like in terms of thinking about physical activity, it's work for anyone to like be physical, but specifically for us with CF, yeah, it can be scary, and it's hard sometimes to find a balance between what's a good amount of exercise and what's too much. And so, but once you start doing it, you feel better, right? It's incremental, and it depends on who you are and, what else you're dealing with. But you can find that balance point where, and you have to refine that balance point all the time, where you're doing enough to like take care of yourself. Like it's about taking care of yourself. But I think like no matter how we frame it like that, we have to also say like, it kind of sucks when you first start. Like it just sucks, right? You got to get through the sucky part of like physical activity. But then it starts to be something that feels better. And then you also, when you stop doing it, you realize you need it. Like I'm in this weird place right now where like, because of COVID, I was teaching dance, and then I was teaching at a university when COVID first started. And then like I was taking dance classes online, and then like, it's been like about a month since I've done anything physical, and I feel it, you know, I just feel wrong. I feel off and weird, and, you know, and I'm going to have to reface that tough part, right. To get back into it. Right. So I don't know, those are my thoughts.
That's the worst part. I remember, like I said, I was 21 in pulmonary rehab, and I remember I was like, look at what everyone else is doing. This is supposed to be easy. And no, I hate when people are like, oh, just go for a run, and they don't recognize how hard starting can be. So thank you for recognizing that. That's super important. Brandon, how did you really get into your fitness journey, and what would you give advice to someone who is you know, at that point where they're starting to look into fitness to help their health?
So my parents really pushed the be physical part first, and that started the whole cycling thing. But my wife really told me to push hard. She's the one that taught me to don't settle for what you're doing now. Keep going farther, and so that really got me into it. And then when we started doing Emily's races, and I actually got to know Emily, then I really wanted to go even farther. And so Emily really helped me push to the next level, because I had that extra inspiration. And then especially fundraising for her, that just, it fills me with such joy to be able to help other people, especially with the Kickback program, can give back. So that really, I think, is what pushed me to the next level.
Emily's a rock star.
She does rock CF. And Colleen, what was the thing that really got you into fitness, and do you have any advice for anyone who's in that same position?
So I got that VHS tape like because I was in college and like thought yoga was a thing that like girls who look like me did. I don't know. So, but that's not important. What is important is that I think it was 2012, I developed osteopenia, which is like when your bones start to deteriorate. It's a step before osteoporosis. And I was instructed to start training with weights because I needed to start taking care of my bones. And because I started going to a gym and I got over that, like, I don't know, fear of working out in public, which for me, it seems like a common CF thing because, you know, the coughing and the wheezing and all of that happens when you work out. Overcoming that fear was a huge step for me. But I guess like the fear of my bones deteriorating was a bigger fear. So that really motivated me. And then I started taking Bar 3 classes. And so Bar 3 combines dance, Pilates, and yoga. That's the 3. And they incorporate some mindfulness into it because they want to honor the yoga part of their 3. And that got me really like into the idea of going to a yoga studio. And then once I started going to a yoga studio, that was it for me. Like, oh my God, that was my thing. I found it. I loved it. I was intimidated a lot by the breathing cues, and to be honest, I just ignored them in the beginning because like my lungs couldn't do what the teacher was saying to do. So I just ignored it. I guess I kind of regret not even trying now, but that has informed the way that I teach breath, so it was helpful in a way. And of course, there were some studios that weren't right for me, like the ones with the incense burning or just, you know, like generally unclean situations where I just didn't feel comfortable breathing close to the ground. But, you know, I think just as with any physical activity where there is a person leading you through it, there's always a level of like trying again to find the teacher or the studio or gym or trainer or whatever that is right for you. So my advice to people wanting to start is like, don't go to one place and train with one instructor and decide, oh, like Pilates isn't for me, period. Because like, that's just one little example of it, right? And there's so many different people who approach things different ways. So yeah, if a studio is smoky and dusty, find a cleaner one.
I completely agree. Definitely try, not just trying that one place. It's finding that one that fits with you like a puzzle piece is important. We do have only about 2 minutes left, but I do really want to get to this last question because I think it is very important. So maybe in about 30 seconds, if you each could answer, do you compare yourselves to non-CFers? And how do you keep your sanity in check with that comparison? Would anyone like to go first?
That is
Brandon?
a question for 30 seconds.
We only got a little bit of time. I wanted to get it in.
Yes, I do, but then I remind myself not to. I don't like to compare myself even to CFers because we're all on like a spectrum of disease progression, and just because one thing works for or has worked for, or like one person's doing one thing, doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be for me. And yeah, that's my 30-second answer.
You want to go, Brandon, or you want me to go?
How's that?
Go, April.
Okay. Yes. And similarly, I try to redirect myself. I think also not to be too like theoretical. You know, we live in a really ableist world, so it's very hard to not do that. And the value on what we produce as human beings all the time and how fast we produce it makes it really hard not to do that. But that's something I'm really like, I'm trying to think about a lot. Like, we each have something really valuable to offer, no matter if it fits into the structure of, you know, productivity, you know. So yeah, but yeah, it's really, it is default. It's the default to just sort of look around and compare yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, April. Brandon, would you like to close us out?
Yeah, so in my races, I find myself not necessarily comparing myself to non-CFers because I just don't think that's fair to anybody, but I do find myself using them to push me farther because I figure if they can do it with healthy lungs and I can get near them or beyond their position in the race, then I'm doing something right. And so I use that as motivation, but not necessarily as a comparison to where I am, because I don't think that's healthy for anybody.
Thank you all. I completely agree. You know, we're all on that spectrum, whether we have CF or not. I think that's so important to recognize. So we are at the end of our panel, our second panel. So I really wanted to thank all of our audience for coming and being witness to all these amazing stories, all these vulnerable people being able to put themselves out there. So thank you to April, Colleen, and Brandon for authentically sharing your story and giving us a little bit of a glimpse into your fitness journey and your lives. So I will kick it back to Kat, but yes, thank you all.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Chelsea, too, for being the same. You're right in there with them, and you moderated beautifully. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Kat. And yeah, thank you, Chelsea, for doing such an amazing job hosting. Appreciate that. And all the panelists, you guys have awesome stories and really inspirational to me to hear all these stories. So thank you for sharing those. Yeah, so Kat and I started Attain Health in 2017. And kind of like Taylor was saying earlier, we saw this gap between what physicians were recommending, what PTs were recommending in terms of not just exercise, but you know, CFRD management, nutrition, treatment adherence. And so there was this disconnect between what was being recommended and what people were actually doing. And we thought, you know, physicians, they just don't have the time to, you know, be hands-on as much as you really need. And we could kind of be that, fill that gap and help people sort of achieve the goals that their care team have for them. So we, in the fitness world, from an exercise standpoint, you know, people are told to exercise, but they don't know what to do or how to do it or how to start. And a lot of times they see a lot of you guys on social media, you know, some of the panelists, and they see the amazing things that you've done, and maybe they'll try to replicate a workout that you've done, or try to, you know, maybe they'll try to do Brandon's workout, but that's not where they are. And, you know, Brandon didn't start there, or no, you know, or Josh, nobody started there. So we're trying to help people understand where they are and meet them where they are, and find a place to start exercise, and to teach them what to do is a really important part of it, but also kind of why they're doing it and how to do it, not just how to do the exercise, but how to implement exercise into their daily lives. Most people aren't gonna have, they're not that passionate about exercise as some of the panelists that we have today, and they're not gonna make it their main goal in life, and that's okay. So we just wanna try to help them understand that that's okay, but it's also really beneficial, and how can we incorporate that, or help you incorporate that into just a daily routine. So as we kind of experimented with different ideas and working with people, we really found that the most important part was, yeah, kind of keeping people motivated, keeping them committed. And the biggest thing that we could do we couldn't motivate them, but they can help motivate each other. So we try to use programs where if you're a part of the program, you're a part of a team and you're working together. We set up competitions that are fun. And the whole goal is that you're doing this for yourself, but you're also doing this for your team, and make it more of a group type environment, which is really hard to do in, you know, in the virtual world. And that's kind of the world that, as with CF, that you've been in for a really long time. A lot of people don't want to go to a gym because it's not the most sanitary place, or don't want to attend classes. And we try to want to bridge that gap and help bring the classes to you, you know, in your home, and also create programs for you that are personalized to you and that will help you reach your goals. And a lot of times, you know, some people have great goals of wanting to run a marathon or hike the Appalachian Trail or cycle a century, but a lot of people just want to feel better. So that's okay too. And we're just trying to get the people there, and yeah, so they can start exercising, start feeling better. But we also want to give them a vision of where they can be with continued exercise and with commitment. A lot of times I feel like, and you guys have touched on this in the panel, that people maybe sell themselves a little short, or they say because I can't, or other people or care teams sell them short because they have CF. And we want to help them understand that you can do these amazing things, and you don't have to be held back. So yeah, our whole kind of program is based around that mentality. We have a couple different programs, and some we're going to start to introduce. One is, like I mentioned before, just a team training program where I'll meet with you one-on-one, and we'll do a movement screen and discuss goals. And then I create a personalized program for you based on your equipment and your schedule and what your goals are. And then from there, we'll set up these team competitions where you're part of a small team, and we'll do these 4, 8, or 12-week competitions where you guys can compete against each other to try to basically adhere to your goals and adhere to the schedule that you made for yourself, your exercise schedule. So it's just kind of a fun way to interact with other people with CF and also exercise. and feel better. We're also going to start doing some live training too with Brooke, and have small groups. This is probably going to be at least initially focused on teens and young adults, but we'll probably also incorporate adults into it as well. But groups of 3 or 4, and it'll basically like a class that you would do at a gym, where you're still doing your own personal workouts, but you can be coached. And we think this is a really good way to both kind of increase adherence to exercise and that pure motivation. And also having a live coach watching you is a really great way to improve quickly. As you guys know, with yoga, it's a lot harder to do it on your own or to just follow a videotape if you're not getting that feedback. So with that feedback, you can really advance more rapidly. And then we're also going to start, we'll do an exercise challenge just for for the whole CF community, whoever wants to be part of that. And we'll send out some additional information after this about what that's going to look like. So just want to thank you all for being a part of this, and we really appreciate you.
Being here. We got 3 cool panelists, each doing different things, but inspiring to myself and the community and beyond is actually a better way to put it. The first person is Lisa Bentley, and then we have Patrick Buenzli, and then Marten Devlieger. Yeah. Ich spreche Deutsch, Patrick, so I'll help. We can do yours in German.
No, that's, I'm with English, that's fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, English might be better, actually. But we'll see. Yeah. We'll start with Lisa. Lisa is a super smiler and Ironman, I've heard, and super accomplished triathlete, 11-time Ironman winner. Has been definitely one of my greatest inspirations. When I started running and biking in 2006, the first people I saw were Jerry Cahill and then Lisa Bentley. So definitely been looking up to you for a while. But let's just get a brief intro, and then we'll go to the questions after everyone is introduced.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm Lisa Bentley, and thank you for the introduction. I was actually a math and computer science teacher. That was my first career, but I was dabbling in triathlon while I was a full-time teacher, and gradually I was dabbling more in teaching and a little bit, I was doing a bit more full-time sport, and I resigned from full-time teaching in 1999 to pursue sport full-time, actually at the advice of my cystic fibrosis doctor, which I'm sure a discussion like that probably happens 1 in a million times, where your CF doctor tells you should resign from your full-time job with benefits to become a full-time athlete. And so I pursued triathlon and Ironman distance full-time and retired from professional sport in 2009. And now I'm continuing to stay healthy and fit as a coach and a speaker and an author, and dabbling in tons of things. So I am very happy to be here and promote exercise with the public.
Yeah, you're definitely not even you've retired from triathlon world. Patrick, you're next. Tell us about yourself. Let me read this quickly though. A motto that I've read about you is you're always finding the happy moments in life. The main thing we focus on are staying active, eating a healthy, high-calorie diet, which is good for us all, and focusing on meditation. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then,
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I'm Patrick. I'm working for a bank, so I'm head of the risk department, but yeah, it's not really so much of my business. And I started to be active in the CF community 2 years ago. And I have an own website where the original idea was actually to support others a bit who either don't have the help from the clinics or live in countries where there's so much of health support and stuff. And this became actually bigger and bigger. So I'm doing all sorts of stuff like testing new devices, like giving tips and stuff. And I'm also promoting, a bit of a healthier lifestyle, because I used to have a different lifestyle as well. And ever since I had lots of infections and stuff, I changed that, and it's really cool.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing actually I think one of the most inspiring things about a lot of people who are active with exercise is almost like the before and after side of things. And I know you showcase that on your Instagram. So definitely hit on that in a little bit. But next up, we have Marten coming from Canada, CF Adventure Life on Instagram. I mean, I follow a lot of crazy people on Instagram, but you're definitely the most adventurous person that I see. So tell us about yourself, Marten.
That's a nice comment, thanks. So I'm obviously Marten Devlieger from Canada. I'm 39 years old. I'm married, have 2 children, and I've always lived quite an adventurous life, a little bit like the speaker who spoke first, that my doctor really pushed me hard. I started running at a very young age, around Boston Marathon, quite a few marathons. And then that kind of led into a lot of other adrenaline sports. I'm an adrenaline junkie, so I kiteboarded professionally. I'm a sponsored mountain biker, still do all that kind of stuff. And I actually flew helicopters for a living till my mid-20s until I had a GI bleed because of my CF liver disease. So I lost that. And then, it was a hard time in my life. And then I went from there. I don't know if you know as well, I invented the Monarch airway clearance system, and I partnered with Hillrom. And then that kind of led me into public speaking and helping people around the world with CF. And that's what, at that point is when I started Instagram, and that's kind of where it evolved to where it is today. And then I brought it full circle with my motorbiking and kiteboarding and mountain biking. So it's been an awesome ride, and I hope I can help a lot of people, but I'm a little crazy. And that's where I find my freedom from my disease. So, but I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I mean, and that just shines through just the joy you get out of everything you do. With kiteboarding and mountain biking, it's just so cool to see. You're so happy when you do it, man. And even getting out there with your son, I saw a couple pictures of that too. So that's great. So cool. So let's get some questions going, guys, and then we'll I'll kind of direct the questions to each of you individually. But if you want to jump in and piggyback off something, that would be cool too. We'll start with Lisa, 11-time Ironman champion. I guess what is being like Ironman is 140.6 miles. It's not for the faint of heart. And here you are out there doing it and winning. How do you feel about that? And what did it take to get to that point of becoming not only a triathlete and an Ironman, but a successful champion?
It was definitely a long road, and nothing happens overnight. I took up sport when I was in grade school and in high school, but I was never great. And in fact, my grade 7 teacher told me, I remember one day I was so excited because, I probably ran further than normal. And I said, oh, I love being an athlete. And he said, you're not an athlete. You're active, but you're certainly not an athlete. And, I've never forgotten that. And I'm the first person to admit that I don't have a whole lot of talent. I got a lot of tenacity, but I don't have a whole lot of talent. And I'm sure there's a tiny bit of talent there. Of course there is. But as I said to my students as a teacher, and I say to athletes that I coach now, I would take hard work over talent any day. And I worked really hard. But I really, my goal in high school was to get a scholarship to go to university. So I got a scholarship, went to university for math and computer science. And when I was at university, I took up sport really so that I would meet people and be social, because I was away from home for the first time. And it was ironically when I was at university that I was diagnosed with CF. But if we can all place ourselves as 20-year-olds away from home, finding out you have CF, all I thought of was, hey, fantastic, I'm going to get the antibiotics I need. And I'm like, whatever, like I'm healthy. As a kid, I was always sick, but we didn't know what it was. But now I was like, oh, awesome. I'm not going to be sick for 9 months anymore. I'm going to get sick, get medicine. I'll be great. Anyway, it didn't even come into mind. I was at university. I was running competitively. I just met friends who were doing triathlon, and I was happy as a lark. And yeah, I'd get sick, and yeah, there was some difficult times. I went to the Pan Am Games, I remember, in 1995 in Argentina, and I was so sick I couldn't run around the track once, but pumped my body with some ciprofloxacin and antibiotics, and I was good to go. And so I was doing the Olympic distance, which is the short course, which you see when you watch the Olympics. So 1.5 kilometer swim, 40K bike, 10K run. And, you know, gradually I was morphing into the longer distances, and I thought, this is fantastic. I get to exercise and train all day long, and that's called a race. That's called an Ironman. And I thought, how fantastic. And I did my first Ironman. And I think that's really my talent, is being able to drive my body for a long time. And so I started doing Ironman. I was still working full-time as a teacher, math and computer science. And you know, I was moving up, definitely getting on the podium, and really wanted to win an Ironman. And I was really training quite hard. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning and go swim with kids, 10-year-olds, from 5:30 to 7. And then I go teach calculus and algebra, computers, and then I'd be back training again, and then do schoolwork and start again. And I remember saying to my CF doctor, you know, I keep getting all these infections, and I'm really tired, and I think I'm burnt out. And she says, you got to quit teaching and be a full-time athlete. And like I said, I don't think that's a conversation she has that often, but she said, it's time to do it. And so I did, and, you know, started racing Ironman, and actually started, you know, the goal was to win, and I worked hard, and I did. And there were lots of times I competed unwell. I was very fortunate that my doctors never told me I couldn't do anything. And there was many times I raced on antibiotics. But, you know, when you're really fit, and when you're driven, and when the mind, you know, the mind is so darn strong. And there was races where I was so sick, and it was like, you know, God gave me a pass for 9 hours to go do my sport, and I would get away with it sometimes, and have great races. But for me, CF has been a superpower, because it gave me a reason every time I raced, because no matter what happened in the race, I knew that me participating and was going to give some hope to a family that had kids with CF, because they'd say, hey, you know, you can be like her. And, you know, there's certainly no expectation that everyone does a triathlon or does an Ironman with CF, but there is an expectation that you get out there and move, and you do your best, and you try your best. And I knew that my races would give that little bit of hope that families with kids with CF could do that. And that, you know, that's an incredible power. And so, yeah, maybe I didn't ever win the world championships, and maybe I could have won 30 Ironmans if I didn't have CF, but I have to say, I don't think I would have won one Ironman without CF, because I had a reason to push to the finish line every single time I raced. So it was definitely a journey, and I feel pretty blessed.
That's so awesome to hear. And I mean, it resonates with me. So like, I want to get into like what your favorite discipline is, and we'll hit on that later. But I find that people with CF, like you said, you might not have won an Ironman if you didn't have CF. So there's definitely this drive inside of us that, sure, a lot of us aren't winning things, but we have the drive to just do it. And we are out there with peers without CF, like in my running group or biking group, and I'm keeping up with them. I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing. And that draws from inspiration from you and everyone else. So it's just so cool, man. So pumped. I remember emailing you when I was running, and I had to take my first dose of oral Cipro, because normally I do IVs, and I like emailed you for some advice, and I appreciate that to this day.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah. So Patrick is a surfer dude, I guess we say. And we know saltwater is great for people with CF, but why is surfing, if you can break that down to us, like why is it an optimal form of exercise for us? And how did you get started surfing?
Well, I fell a couple of times into the sea, and that was basically my start to surfing. By the way, surfing in Switzerland is really shitty. So if you ever want to go on a surf trip, don't come to Switzerland. But I used to live in Australia. Actually, we'll probably be back now if there's no COVID around. But I really started surfing because I was trying different sports. When I was around 15, I was really curious about the world of sports. And I had a hard time finding stuff. So I played roughly around 10 sports. I ended up in the top league of American football here. which is, by the way, in America, nothing in comparison. And then I discovered surfing because I love the sea. And, you know, also when I moved to Australia, I started feeling that the salty air around the sea, and my flat was right around Bondi Beach. So we really had the salty air all around us. And it really felt good, right? So I was anyway super healthy CFer before I had all the infections. And I don't do this, but I almost stopped inhaling and do my therapy because it really helped me and really benefits me. So, and that's when I started surfing, actually, because everyone at Bondi Beach is surfing as well. And for me, it's a mix between, you know, there's a bit of stamina in this. You have to crawl through the waves and stuff, and you have to do nosedives and stuff. But it's also, it trains also the flexibility of your lungs, right? When you do the turns of your upper body, it's kind of a bit a simple version of yoga, right? It's not that long, but you still do the turns and stuff with your body. And that in combination with the salt air is just perfect for me. It's all the CF guys I know who surf really benefit from it. And to me, it's a combination of it's a perfect sport.
Yeah.
I also love other sports, and yeah, well, obviously here in Switzerland I can't surf, but I have kind of a surf skate. You know, it's like a skateboard, and you can surf around the streets.
Awesome.
I don't have salt in the air, but I throw a little bit of salt in the air in front of me.
Throw it over your shoulder.
Absolutely. So I got that, and yeah, that was how I got into surfing, and it's really a sport that I also like to promote. Right? If it's something for you, then it's really cool. If you ever went on my website, there's tons of surfing pictures, and yeah, it's really cool.
It's cool, and I guess, yeah. I mean, we kind of have you to thank. I think the CF community, the surfers in Australia to thank for one of our treatments that we're currently on. A lot of us are on the hypertonic 7% nebulized treatment, and they found that because surfers in Australia were so much healthier during surfing season, they ended up funding a study, and sure as heck, that's why we have that treatment today. So thank you to you and your friends.
Yeah.
So Marten, yeah. I know we surfed a couple years ago, me and Jerry and the Bike to Breathe crew, and it wasn't pretty, but it was fun.
Yeah.
I think I'm cut out for surfing.
Nice.
Marten, so a lot of us, we heard from people on the panels earlier that this is kind of like a very common question is like, have we ever been told we couldn't do things? And if so, like, what were they? And was it because you have CF? So have you ever been directly told, like, you can't do this because you have CF, or you shouldn't do this? Like, what are some things that you've kind of seen with that?
One really strikes to mind, and it's actually, as what's her name spoke at first there, I'm horrible with names, so sorry. my bell's been rung a few too many times. But I was told actually I believe it was just out of high school, because I started running quite a bit. That was my mainstay for keeping my lungs clean. I would try to run every day, go to the gym, and then do my other sports as well. But I still remember saying, I actually won a race in town, a local race, and the guy says, well, you have a disease. I don't think you could ever run a marathon. And I never really thought too much about that. But when people say I can't do nothing, it just gives me more drive to do it and prove, like she said, to prove the CF world that I can do it and we can do it. So actually, it was almost like it was from God. The next day I got a call from actually a GI doctor in Boston that said, hey, we have some charity spots for the Boston Marathon to raise money for CF liver disease. We can't find nobody around here that was willing to run the whole thing. We would like to, if you could run it, you have to run the whole thing. I says, well, I ran one 3 weeks ago. I can do that. I just got to get my butt in gear and back in training. And actually, so that was something that, just because they said I couldn't do it, I didn't want the world to be labeled with CF that we can't do these things. So I trained and I ran it, no problem. It was all good. But it's stuff like that gets me going. It's just the same with mountain biking. If someone says, that road gap is totally undoable, if I bash my head, I'm gonna do it. I don't care. So that's just the way I am. And like she said before, it's because my CF. I think if I didn't have CF, I wouldn't have drive to do it. Like, why would I waste my time running down the road every day for 20 miles for weeks training? It's just dumb in a normal person's mind, right? but I had more to prove than just running the race. I wanted to prove that, like she said, to the kids growing up, to my, kids I mentor, or even to my younger sister, she's passed away now, but, stuff like that, it's doable, and it's all in the mind, right? Our mind is so strong, and that's kind of where drives me to push things.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. There's only so much you can do to train with your body, but when it comes to performing, and especially in a marathon, it's mental. I mean,
totally.
Sure, you have to train the miles, you have to eat and drink properly and take care of your body, but to get you through those miles, it's your mind, and I think CF really kind of sets us up for that.
Yeah, and we're fighters to begin with, right? We're used to pain, we're used to fighting, and actually I get off on that, and I'm probably the first lady who talked as well. We get off on that type of pain and the feeling it gives us at the end that we accomplished it, and that the world says we couldn't, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, you see people suffering on the course, and you're just like cruising by, and you're like, man, this feels good. The pain is good. Yeah, and when you're done, it's like, I did it. Let's do another one.
Yeah, I don't know
That's the first thing I said. Yeah. First thing I said when I finished my first marathon was like, great, when can I do another one? And everyone else is like, this was horrible. But Lisa, you've also run marathons outside of Ironman, I'm sure, right? So what, out of running, biking, and swimming, what is your favorite discipline, if you will?
Running was my first love. That's what I did in university and high school. So I would definitely be from a running background, but that's always hard in a triathlon and an Ironman because it's the last sport. So
I know.
If you haven't paced properly, or you've messed up your nutrition, or you've lost too much sodium, in our case with CF, the run can become a bit difficult. But it was always my weapon, and that's where I would usually run down people. And I always felt like I just get it to a certain level of pain, and I could just hold it there, because I think definitely the pain threshold is pretty high. So definitely running. And I actually didn't run my first proper marathon until after I retired from professional sport. So I had done 33 marathons in an Ironman, but I had never done a pure marathon until I retired, and I got an invite to Boston. And at this stage, I had really, I de-trained. I now was not racing as a professional. I was still active, and it was actually a year. I had gotten quite unwell when I retired from sport, and my lung function went down into the 50s, and was, on IV and hospital, etc. And my lung function only rebounded to about 70 after that. And I had, enjoyed a pretty robust lung function for most of my career. Of course, when I got sick, it would always dip, but as long as I got on medicine, I got over it. And this was the first time I didn't. And so I really, I was really struggling every time I exercised, and it was all about just moving as opposed to performance. And then I get this invite to the Boston Marathon, and I was like 6 weeks. And, my longest run was probably 75 minutes. Like, and of course I've got the label, 11 times. Champion.
Yeah.
So, and part of me was like, oh my gosh, like there's there's that expectation. Like, I'm a runner, and I've run, 2:58 in an Ironman for a marathon. Everyone's going to think I can run 2:40, but I'm not that athlete anymore. And anyways, part of me was like, I can't do it. And then part of me was like, no, you have, like, no. Like, you must do it, because this is you now. This is present. And you'd have to just do the best you can with what you've got. And that's been my mantra for my whole career, is do the best you can with your deck of cards. And if that's a lung infection, that's the way it went. And if it was, that was the way it was. And now this was okay. My new reality was 2 years post professional sport. Anyway, I did Boston, and I think I ran the exact same time I would run off the bike. So I think my very first marathon, I ran 2:58. I was so happy. And, but I have to tell you, running a marathon was so much harder than racing an Ironman. So hopefully,
oh my gosh. Well, you trained for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, I could relate to that, Bill. But I've done Olympic size triathlon, and I think they're easier just because you can break it up and you get a rest on the bike.
Yes, exactly. And so I finished the race, and I was walking, limping, crying. I wasn't crying, but I was moving pretty slow. And as my husband walked towards me, and he's laughing his head off, and these women are saying to him, shame on you, she just did Boston. He said, listen, she's raced 33 Ironmans. she looks pathetic. This is the worst she's ever looked. And it was the truth. Like, I thought, I can't walk to my hotel. Like, I'm totally out of it. Anyway, so for all those marathoners out there, total respect.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, what a cool story. So I know the four of us, I guess, with CF up here have experienced hospitalizations and what it's like to run or train or exercise with a PICC line or on antibiotics. And Patrick, when you've gotten out of the hospital, like, what do you find is the best way to get back to life, get back into your routine? Do you stop exercising for a little bit if you're not feeling good and then ramp back up, or what's that look like for you?
No, I actually had the best experience if you just keep on going with the exercises. But by the way, I couldn't run a marathon at all. I went to a fundraising event once for CF, and I did a 5-kilometer run, and I placed last. But I was there to make a point, so that was actually good. And
I can't surf. I can't surf, so.
If I can teach you surf, you can teach me to run a marathon. No, it's
there you go.
I spent lots of weeks in the hospital, and sometimes even a couple of weeks a year. And I found the best way is just to keep going with the exercises, you know. Because when you feel down, like you're connected to oxygen, you also have the IV stuff in it. And it doesn't really have to be, you know, surfing or running a marathon, which is also not, you know, possible with oxygen and stuff. But if you just keep going, and I used to walk then, you know, a couple of flights of stairs. And in the beginning it was maybe 2 or 3 stairs, and then and increased again. And I also started a new training program, so a split fitness in the gym. And that actually helped me a lot because it was the perfect training. I was still feeling very low, and I took, you know, just a couple of kilograms to exercise. But that was the best training actually for me, to just go out and do it, even if you feel low. And I took antibiotics for 2 years straight with no break in it. And I just kept going, you know. And usually doctors say, you know, don't do it. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your body. You should rest and stuff. But I found that it's the opposite. You know, you should be active, and you should go out, and it doesn't really have to be stamina or strength training, you know. It has to be some exercise that really suits you, whether that's cycling or walking or whatever, just something. But it's really important to keep on with that. And also with the therapy, you know. I did lots together with the physiotherapist at the local clinic. And that was really good and really beneficial. And I was actually able to increase my lung function by almost 20% within a couple of weeks. That dropped before, and then together, you know, with the antibiotics, but also with the exercises, that increased quite fast. And I was really surprised because before, at some hospital stays, I didn't exercise at all. And I felt that.
Yeah, you definitely feel it. And I think, like you say, it's a combination of exercise, antibiotics, doing your treatments, and then just doing what you can at the moment, right? Because sometimes we get super sick and we're unmotivated. But even if it's walking around the unit at the hospital or doing flights of stairs, like you say, it's super important, right?
You know, it's really the little things, right? Even if you just, I know it's super hard if you're in the hospital and you're pumped with antibiotics and you really feel shitty, and it's really hard to find motivation to go out and do something. But even if it's just taking your oxygen tank and walking around the hospital, it's perfect, right?
yeah. And then, like, I don't know if you guys, like, friends or family, almost discouraged, like, no, you need to rest, stay inside. And you're like, no, I'm going out for a run. I don't care if I have a PICC line or my ports access, right? So we know our bodies, and that's what somebody on the first panel talked about. I think it was Teena, is really, we're at the state in our life now where we know our bodies, we know where to push it, we know when to hold back. So we're essentially, right?
You know, as you mentioned, I think we all had doctors that told us to not do something, and we actually do quite the opposite. And you know, also there's a couple of things we shouldn't do, like bungee jumping and stuff. And after my first hospital stay, I actually booked a parachuting. So when parachuting a couple of weeks later, it was a bit crazy, but you know,
likes that.
And it was the best experience I ever had. And everyone said, no, you shouldn't do it. And it wasn't probably the best and most mature thing to do. but it's still, you know, it's the limit we set to ourselves. And sometimes we also have to ignore the limits they set for us.
Yeah, I agree, man. Totally. Marten, have you jumped out of a plane?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Great. Cool. I'm glad you're alive. I will not do that. Okay, other roadblocks. Like, what roadblocks has CF created for you? And how have you overcome them or went around them? Or?
Another big when I became a commercial helicopter pilot, getting a medical was a big roadblock. In Canada, it's like when people go on the internet and they Google cystic fibrosis, and you get a young parent who just has a kid and they reach out to me on Instagram, and they're like, I Googled and I'm crying for days, you know, and that's how these Transport Canada people were. And they basically said, yeah, you have CF, forget it. And I you know, my doctor never discouraged me to do anything and actually pushed me to do everything, because he knew if he'd say no, I'd do it anyways. But so they helped me through it, and I managed to get a medical. That was a big hurdle. And another big hurdle in my life, obviously, is when I don't know if you guys are familiar, like I have pretty bad CF liver disease and enlarged spleen, and I had a GI bleed. And I was actually, when I was training for the Boston Marathon, and I started puking out blood like crazy. And that was a huge, till then I could always control my disease fairly well with exercise, running, you know, with stubbornness. But that was something that just got thrown in there like, whoa, crap, like I just got hit by a train. So that really had to kind of scope my way of life and what I wanted to do and how to deal with it. And that pretty much sent my life on a whole different path. So, but I think the biggest thing through it was, you know, if I look back now, it's probably one of the best things that happened to me. I know it sounds bad to say that, but, you know, it got me on the path of not living in a hockey bag, flying helicopters all over, to more of a path, you know, inventing the Monarch, helping people with CF, and having a family. Because I think if I didn't, I'd probably be racked up in a helicopter crash somewhere, probably.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I think so too, man. So what does your weekly routine look like now with working out and riding and kite surfing? Is it kite surfing season?
Yeah,
for a little bit more.
So,
yeah,
it depends what time or where we are in the season. So right now we're just in the fall, so I will get up in the morning. I try to do something every day, whether it's either mountain biking, running, kiteboarding, and then we'll of course getting into snowmobiling and skiing season. So, but I try. My biggest problem is I don't find enough time to sleep and rest. So I'm on the opposite scale, and I have, you know, they're like, just sit for a few days and gain weight. But I feel so good when I do it, and I think it does as much for me mentally as it does physically. And I think if you're mentally in a right place, your body physically fights better, right? So I guess that's pretty much what my routine is. It's
awesome.
And
you're doing what you love.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, man. And I think Emma earlier was talking about, everyone was talking about how exercise, you know, is good for the lungs, it boosts your immune system. But then Emma brought it home with like, no, it's so great for our emotional health and wellness, right? So you feel like you're out there doing something. I don't know how many miles you ride on that mountain bike and jumping over stuff, dude, but you're ripping out there.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And one thing I just want to say is, you know, like people ask why I do it. Is it just for your health? But when I'm in the zone, and I'm sure she can say the same when she runs a triathlon, when I'm in there, my mind, like normally your mind, you wake up, you think about CF. You take a pill, you think about CF. You do your Monarch, you do your treatment, you think about CF. You think about the future, especially because I have kids. But when I'm riding my bike down a hill, on the verge of hitting a tree or on the verge of, you know, winning something, I don't have CF. It's like it's gone. And that's the freedom I crave. So I just want more and more and more. And the funny joke in my family is that CF's not going to kill me. It's going to be something else because I'm going to push it too far. But then you know what? I did what I loved, right? So I'm never going to stop doing it. Yeah.
And you live up to your Instagram title or handle. CF Adventure Life. Wow. That's inspiring, man, and beautiful. Wow. Lisa, and how would you react to that? I mean, you're a professional athlete for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on that same page. Is that that's, exercise and when I was racing, that brought normalcy to my life. And when I was on IV antibiotics and in the hospital, it's funny that Patrick said about going up and down the stairs. I would go and do stairs, mainly because I knew if I could activate my lungs to get rid of mucus, I'd be healthier. And that was my vehicle. That's how I did it. That's how I stayed healthy. So the normal laying in a hospital room and even having the CF physio wasn't doing it. And it was actually my CF doctors that said, do you want us to bring you an exercise bike to your hospital room? And I said, oh, that's okay. I'll just go run the stairs. Anyways, finally, when I got released and I was on home care, home IV, I would get on my bike, my stationary. And, it was interesting because obviously I was unwell. And when you're on your bike, you measure a thing called wattage, that's your power. And my watts, that power number, were really quite low for my heart rate. But I was sick and I accepted that. I wasn't crazy. I was just like, hey, I'm so happy. And I remember my husband coming down saying, why are you on your bike? What's making you get on your bike? And I said, because for the hour a day I'm riding my bike, I'm normal. I'm not sick. And I said, so this is my joy, even though I'm gasping for air, even though it was so hard, it was the time where I was normal. And, there was a lot of years in my career where I didn't tell media that I had CF. It was very early in my career. And I was actually at the Pan American Games in 1995. And there was a Canadian on the team, Martin would know, Silken Laumann, who's a tremendous Canadian athlete. And she tested positive, not for a banned substance. We're not talking steroids. She had taken Benadryl or some, cough medicine. It was nothing. But it was, you're not allowed to take that. And so they wanted to change the spotlight. And they said, oh, Lisa, we'll do a story about you. You racing in the triathlon for the Pan Am Games. Let's do a story about you and your cystic fibrosis. And I said, no. I said, I can't. I said, first of all, I have 3 brothers and sisters with CF. So me talking about it impacts them. And I'm in Argentina, right? So I can't call them all up and say, hey, is everything okay? Can I tell the world that our family has CF? And my brother at the time was trying to adopt children. And, adoption for a person with CF is not an easy thing.
I got told no.
Exactly. I got told no. So I understood that. So I was not going to impact them. But then the other side of it was I wanted to be recognized as an athlete first. I didn't want everyone to say, wow, you've done amazing things. You have CF. I wanted it to be, hey, congratulations. You've had a great career. Oh, look, you have CF. I didn't want it to be the other way around, that asterisk or that built-in excuse. And it was only once I had established myself as an athlete that I kind of let that in a bit. By this stage, my brother had adopted children, so it was a bit easier to do it. But like I said, I never wanted it to be an excuse. And it was, it's just something that was there. And when it was the right time, then I would be talking about it. But I would say the biggest things that CF has always been a problem when racing in the heat because of the sodium that you sweat out. So it took me a while to learn about that. Certainly going on ciprofloxacin has not been great for my tendons. And I have had Achilles tendon surgery and I've got another, problematic tendon, but that's okay. I'm alive and my lungs are good. And, in 1980, the median age of survival was 12. So how am I going to be I'm not crying over a tendon. And again, the more personal roadblock has been not being able to have children and, do an adoption because of having CF. Birth moms don't want to choose a mom that has CF and they don't care how many Ironmans you've done or how healthy you might be. You have CF and you're going to die. So you cannot be my child's mother. So that's, that's been hard for sure. But, like Martin, I believe that everything happens for a reason. And so that I'm not fighting nature and I'm not going to fight God's plan. This is the plan and we go with the flow.
Yeah, you've been going all right. That's for sure. what is your exercise routine? Like, what are you doing during the week now that you're retired? What gets you out of bed? The pivot from pro athlete to now just retired.
Well, I mean, I'm a lifestyle athlete and I know how good it is for my lungs. So when I retired, my CF doctor actually suspected my lung function would go down because I wasn't exerting as much. So that was like the challenge. That was like them saying, you can't do this. I'm like, oh, watch me. My lung function isn't going to go down. So I've kept a great exercise routine. It helps keep me healthy. So I still try to swim, bike, and run, some combination of those every day. With COVID, swimming was difficult, and I really do like to get into the water. So that's probably been replaced with a bit more of riding my bike. I've got a rowing machine now. I'm spending a bit more time doing strength work because I'm getting older, and the strength component's important as you get older. So a little bit more time spent on that. Walk my dogs a whole lot. And then just doing my work and coaching, and I got to keep fit just so I can keep up with my athletes. When they want to go for a bike
absolutely
ride, they all still think I'm ready to get onto a start line of a race, so they kind of hit me hard when I take them up for a ride.
Slow down, kids. Just let the tire pressure out a little bit on their bikes. Just run them a little low.
I like it.
Yeah, you can pay me for that later. Patrick, I kind of want to get into diet now a little bit, and just because it's so critical. I was born in 82, diagnosed in 83, and lived 80s and 90s where it was just like, eat whatever you want, McDonald's, Taco Bell, just calories all the time. And that really didn't pay off for me because I was in the hospital quite a bit as a teen and early 20s, a lot of digestive issues, not healthy. And once I started running and biking, I kind of switched my diet to a more whole food based vegetarian, fueling my workouts and recovering, right? So making sure I'm recovering with good food, eating to essentially perform. And I know perform is different for all of us here, but I know diet's really big with you, Patrick. Like how have you changed your diet? What are you doing now to get those high calories? And then I want to touch on salt with all of you as well, about how do you keep your salt up?
It's actually funny when you mentioned that back in the 80s, 90s, they said you can eat whatever you want. And it's funny because I had tons of talks with nutritional coach from the clinics, and they all said the same. Just eat it. And it was like, I don't have a diabetes yet. Is there any way to avoid that by not eating sugar? For I know it doesn't come from that reason, but they said no, just eat it because it's calories and it's good for you. And also till I was 20 or so, I ate everything. What I saw, I ate. It doesn't matter if it was sugar or not. And then when I started with the whole CF coach thing, I also wanted to try different stuff, right? And when I got into fitness and sport, I also knew it's not good for me, right? Because when you want to succeed in sport, and I guess the other two can agree with that, it's not only the sport itself. It's also, the rest you get, and it's also the food you eat. Mm-hmm. And so I tried different stuff. Actually, my cousin is a professional football player here, which is soccer in America, by the way. And so all the time he came home, it's like, my nutrition coach suggested a new diet. And I was like, I'm doing it too. So I ate gluten-free for a kind of a time. I ate vegan, vegetarian. Really different stuff. And I really started to eat lots of fruits and veggies as well. A little bit less meat. So most of my week is actually vegetarian, then a bit of meat. And in the beginning, I also drank a lot of shakes, like protein shakes after the training and stuff. But they're just not so healthy as they announce it in the advertisements and stuff. So I also changed my diet, and I'm now just eating super healthy. So whenever I eat veggies and fruits, tons of it actually, bit of meat, whole wheat stuff instead of just plain pasta and stuff. I'm avoiding actually fast food since a couple of years. So I really actually miss the chips from Burger King, but I don't go now. So, but it's really important. And I used to be, lots of CFers I know, they're a bit underrated, right? So I'm 170 tall, and I was 50 kilograms heavy, and I actually started to change my diet, and I was able to put up 14 kilograms in just a bit more than a year. just by changing it together with exercising as well. So diet is really good. And when it comes to salt and stuff, that really changed a lot since I took Symdeco, since I started to take Symdeco. Actually, so before, when I went on a trip, I always had salty stuff with me, like a bag of chips and a bit of stuff. And now that really changed a lot. So I actually don't take care of it anymore, especially. I just eat like everyone else. I just eat a lot, you know. So my brekkie has around 1,000 calories. I just put in some stuff that's called double cream here. It's basically cream that's doubled in fat and calories. And I usually eat, you know, 1.5 or 2 meals, whereas a normal person just eats one. So I usually eat 1.5 pizzas, for example, or just I just clear all the tables that are on the table, and that really helped me a lot.
Cool. That's awesome, man. And your digestion feels good. You found that something that works for you.
Yeah, I had actually, I never had really problems with that. But this year it actually started, you know, with the whole Corona stuff.
Yeah.
It was also a lockdown here, so gyms closed, and since I'm working 100%, so I had to go to the home office, and that really changed tons of the routine in my daily life, and also the digestive problems. And I was twice in the hospital this year for severe constipations, and I'm still taking meds, and I'm still getting back to the road. And now the gym's just open again, and I lost almost 10 kilograms just in a couple of months now, which is quite a lot. And but I'm putting it up again, and I'm doing a new split training, which is really good, and it feels better every day.
Great, man. Keep it up. Keep gaining those LBs, we say here, but we'll call them KLs, KGs over there.
Yeah.
Marten, what's your diet look like? What are you doing to, stay active and recover?
Well, if I wasn't married, I'd eat McDonald's for every meal. So I'm pretty lucky. We eat really healthy. A bit of a struggle with me is because I have CF liver disease. I really have to keep my salt intake down because it's hard on the liver, and then my legs retain fluid. So if I back up a little bit, when I was growing up, played a lot of hockey, played a lot of stuff, and my mom was actually a Dutch nurse. I was born in Holland, and she was very, on the ball, do everything she could. And we pumped in weight gain shakes into me all the time, basically, powerlifting shakes, whatever. And back then they said, who cares, just drink it. My mom questioned one day, that's a lot on your liver because it all has to go clear through your liver, right? Then, I'm sure you know what phosphagen is and all that kind of stuff. So we had to quit all that because my liver was actually getting worse and worse and worse. And then they say, well, eat as much as you can, but everything affects the liver. So eating's been my biggest struggle my whole life. The only way I can gain weight is go to the gym, and I just burn it off. But I am if I see a McDonald's, it's pretty hard for me to drive by it, to be honest with you. But the salt is my biggest problem. I have to watch, so I can't eat all that food because of the salt. And then I really have to watch doing really extraordinary exercise when it's warm, because I can't retain the salt and I get rid of the salt. So I really have to watch. It's a balance. It's tough.
Yeah. So a lot of extra hydration. And then do you do anything with electrolytes to help with that?
Yeah, so I do. I try to take a lot of electrolytes and stuff, and especially training or running or biking and stuff. And I find I eat just I call it a war diet or Dutch diet, whatever you call it, meat, potatoes, and vegetables, and just try, as like my doctor says, for you, eat as balanced as you can, a little bit of everything. If you go too far on the salt, it's going to hurt your liver. If you go too far that way, you're not going to have enough protein, So I found just eating your basic staple meals work the best.
Cool. That's awesome.
Good, yeah.
Cool. You can sneak. It's a weekend. I say you get yourself some McDonald's.
There's no McDonald's where I live in the mountains here. That's the thing.
Oh, sorry, man. Lisa, how was your diet? How has it changed, I guess, from when you were at your peak performing as a pro to now, and especially salt, were there salt tabs you took when you were training and performing, especially during 140.6?
Yeah, I probably now eat more plant-based, although I still have dairy. Although that said, I think that the dairy's, I know dairy's not great for the mucus, so that would be something I would cut out if I was to get quite sick and not get well again. And ironically, before I was diagnosed with CF when I was a kid, and it was normal for me to be on antibiotics for months. Like the doctor just kept pumping me full of antibiotics because I was still sick. And then I remember the doctor, this is like 40 years ago, before any of this eating was vogue. And he said, I want you to cut out dairy. I want you to cut out dairy. And I got healthy, so I do know there's a huge benefit to cutting that out. But anyway, for the most part, I like to eat whole foods. So while I would say I'm vegetarian, I wouldn't eat a fake hot dog. Like I don't eat processed foods just to make myself have something that's like meat. So I eat a lot of beans that I make homemade during the week. And, I would eat things that I bake, but not something that was baked at a store. So I'm more particular about processed foods and additives and things like that. So I'm a pretty pure eater. And I was probably like that when I raced as well.
Yeah.
When I was racing, it was more about fuel than anything else. So I was pretty cognizant of what my body needed for recovery and performance. Whereas now, so then I might do a 3-hour bike ride and I would eat the whole time because I wanted to perform. Whereas now I do a 3-hour bike ride and I get off my bike and I'm going to eat breakfast in my outfit.
Yeah.
Like I basically, the last hour, I'm not thinking about taking in a power bar so that I can function. I'm thinking about, do I want,
what's for breakfast?
Guac today? What do I want? How much food, et cetera. So that's different. When I was racing, salt pills were huge for me. It was the 1997 Ironman World Championships in Hawaii. And I'd gotten there 3 weeks early and basically had sort of sweat out my salt stores because I'd been there in the heat for so long. And so you basically, for endurance exercise, you have enough sodium for about three or so hours of work. And before if you're not replacing. So anyways, I'm out on the bike ride and I get to halfway at Hawi, which is the turnaround. So I've now been racing for probably about 4 hours. And, my arms started to cramp and then my legs started to cramp and I'm thinking, what's going on? And, so I'm grabbing things to drink. Oh, I must be dehydrated. And again, this is 1997. So again, not a whole lot of sports research. So you think, oh, I'm cramping, it must be dehydration. So you keep pumping more fluids in, but all you're doing is further dehydrating yourself because you can't absorb it if you don't have the electrolytes to go along with it. If your sodium's so low, you're going to absorb nothing. So I kept on biking. I got off the bike and it felt like I had Charlie horses all over my legs because they'd been not working as in, pushing the pedals. They had been contracting because of cramping for 90 kilometers. And then I got onto the run and I kept drinking and just kept peeing and like nothing was getting absorbed. And I cried and I walked and I cried and I walked and I got to the finish line and I went into the medical tent and, of course the idea was let's hook you up to an IV, like get some fluids into you. And I said, check my sodium. I said, I have cystic fibrosis. I think it's probably gone down too far. And sure enough, it was at this very low level. They said the word numbers 120, which again, don't mean anything to me, but they panicked and started shoving chips in my face to get some salt in. Of course, then I just threw it all up and it ended up being a big sodium loss. So I went on to get tested and the testing I did showed that I lost 2,000 milligrams per hour of sodium. And that was just at like room temperature. That's not Hawaii 100 degrees. That was just like room temperature.
Oh my God.
This is what you're losing. You can't replace that. So anyway, long story is I would take about 3 to 4 salt tablets per hour during the bike portion in Hawaii. So that's about 1,000 milligrams of sodium per hour on the bike. And predominantly I did that on the bike because you could take in enough water to metabolize that. And then on the run, I would take 3 salt pills an hour because you're getting a little less fluid in. And that seemed to be a bit of a magic number for me. But yeah, the sodium is a huge problem. And taking those electrolyte drinks is good, but you're also getting a lot of sugar. So it's a balancing act. And I don't think I ever got it perfect, but you can't race with somebody pricking your finger every second to test your levels. So
that would be illegal.
Yeah, you just do your best.
No, I hear you on that. And I think the interesting thing in the past 10 years is since Kalydeco and Symdeco, now Trikafta, is those of us who are taking these modulators, our sodium chloride levels are back in check. So for me, pre-Kalydeco, when I would run or bike, like I would literally, as you guys know, your sweat when you're done biking or running would just be like, you'd just be a salt crystal, right? So I started implementing the salt stick tabs into my workouts and routines. But now since Kalydeco, I've kind of dialed back because things are in check. And now I exercise with it like a normal person because things are kind of in balance and in check. So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Marten, we got a last question for you, and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the crowd. I guess you all can answer this. This will be cool. We'll start with Marten, then go Patrick, and then back to Lisa. So how does CF help you see the positives in a bad situation or bad situations that you've been in or have gone through?
I guess any situation that I go through, I'm happy to be alive, I guess, as you can say it. So where I look at my kids now, they'll complain, oh, I got a house on fire, or oh, life's so rough, you know, and then when I get up in the morning and I can go ride my bike or do something or feel good, you don't take that for granted. So it totally makes you, you know, I always say I don't waste an opportunity or waste a minute of the day. And I think if you don't have CF, it's pretty easy to say, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it when I retire. Oh, I'm tired or whatever. And with CF, you don't take things for granted and you don't waste time. And I think that's kind of what CF has really taught me, I guess. And yeah, that every minute is precious, especially, you know, I touched on a little bit that my sister passed away 5 years after transplant. You know, we talked a lot before transplant, after transplant, that she knew she was on borrowed time, but yet she never complained. And every minute she or did something, she made the absolute best of it. And I think that's why all of us on the CF panel have accomplished so much and are so driven, because we don't want to wait till tomorrow to try to accomplish that. We want to do it now, right? Because, so to me, CF is a gift that allows you to not take life for granted, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, totally. Patrick, what would you say on that? Like what, how has it helped you see the positives in some rough situations?
Well, I can only agree with Marten as well. I see it as a, you know, kind of an honor. I tasted the hospital time a lot, and I know that when you're out and when you're a bit healthy and you can do stuff, that it's an honor to do it. And I also strongly believe that if you know where you have to go in life, and if you know your life goals, you can enjoy it quite much. And that's really cool. And I also had a lot of talks with, you know, healthy people that say, yeah, like Marten said, yeah, I'm going to do it tomorrow. And if you have CF and you know your life could be possibly limited and your life expectancy is not so high, it really helps me to enjoy the little things, because I know it's an honor to do it. I know I can. And in general, I only do the stuff that I really want to, because don't waste, you know, a minute doing something that's really not cool. So I really enjoy the little things, whether that's dinner with family or a walk with the dog or something else. It's really, it's the small and smallest moments in life that really count, because we know it can be different. We know. So that really helps me to appreciate it.
Cool, very cool. And Lisa, what would you say to that question?
I think it shows me, because I feel like I've been able to do things that would seemingly be impossible, it makes me think that when I hear bad news, I think it's not really that bad. Agreed. Because we've all here done extraordinary things with bad situations. And so whatever bad situation might confront us, it's like, yeah, I got this, because I've had it for the, you know, I've done X, Y, and Z when the cards were stacked against me for my entire life. And so, you know, I really don't, that's not to say I don't get down. Don't get me wrong. There's been lots of I think we all in the last 6 months can say that there's been some difficult times. But I also, even the COVID pandemic, I see it as an opportunity. An opportunity for for the cream to rise to the top. I see it as an opportunity for us to be better and to reset each other. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, bad news. I take bad news and I reframe it instantly. Like instantly, it can't be that bad. Because like I said, we've all done that probably so routinely we take it for granted, but we're equipped with that now.
Yeah. And if you're in Patrick's world, it's a double cream. Wait for that double cream to rise to the top. So we'll do some Q&A from the audience. There's one in, but if anyone watching wants to submit a question for anyone individually or a broad spectrum question for everyone, that's great. Just type it in and then Kat will send it my way. The first one's pretty cool. I know we all focus on, well, in the CF world, especially doctors, we focus on FEV1. Like, what's your FEV1? So the question here is, how important is your FEV1 number to you? And as a parent of a kid with CF, how do I transition from being my kid's coach into letting him take more control of his workouts? So if anyone wants to stab that one.
I don't mind giving it a go, or you can give it a go, whatever.
Go for it.
Okay, so I have quite a, when I speak around the world, or, I was in Nashville speaking at the CF conference and stuff like that, but I get this question all the time. And I actually look at it totally different. I don't care what my FEV1 is. I will go to the hospital on my checkups, and sometimes if they beg me hard enough, I'll do it. Or if I think I'm sick, I'll do it. But I don't want to limit myself to a number. I want to limit to myself. I guess the reason I do my sports and do what I do is to validate to myself that I'm a normal person. So if I can keep up and win a kiteboarding competition just like you win your races, or I can go out and mountain bike with the best of them, or I can do that, that to me is living, and I don't care what the number is. Because to me, what's important in life is life. It's not what everybody's telling you how life should be. So I don't care what my FEV1 is. I'll tell it straight up, it's 55%. But do I go, and if it goes down 5%, do I care? No, I just go out and work harder. I care when I can't pull a snowmobile over anymore, or if I can't run down the road. Then I know myself, okay, I'm in trouble, I need to do something. That's how I gauge my CF. And that's kind of the way I look at it. And then the other question they were talking about, just maybe rephrase if it's wrong, but what was it? Yeah, maybe read that one.
Sure. It seems the parent is more the kid's coach right now. And this is a question I get a lot when I speak, is like, how do I get my kid to do this? Because they like to do this with me, they like to do this with me, or I coach them for this. But how do they become their own thing and control their own workouts? Like, I don't know what age it is, or how do you get to that point?
So that's an interesting question as well. So I grew up obviously with a very strict Dutch mom, and I was forced to be equal. So you go play hockey, you go do this, you might get sick, but you try be the same as, I was never, you're the sick kid, you got to take it easy. No way. They worked me twice as hard. And what I found, and I don't want to pick on the United States, when I traveled there a lot, I find that their treatment is much more handheld than in Canada. And I think sometimes with me, for instance, I went off, I spent a winter in Austria snowboarding, and, I kind of went off the deep end. Everybody is going to have their fall, right? But that's where you find yourself. That's where you find your strength. And as a parent, I think it's, now that I'm a parent, it's the hardest thing to let your kids fall. But if we never let those kids fall, or like I had a mom, and she goes, I don't want my kid to sleep over. I don't want him to do this. I don't want him to do that. I says, okay, what kind of life is he going to have? He's going to hate you. He's going to hate his life. Let him go live a normal life. And everybody, even if they're healthy, falls, but we learn from it. Let's just hold their hand through that fall and encourage them. So hopefully they don't fall and get too much damage. But everybody needs to find their own path to success. Like, it's running for her, it's adrenaline for me, it's surfing for him. They need to find that on their own. And if we don't give a child the space like my mom gave me, we can't find our own path that we identify ourselves to be proud to fight our own disease. And we need to find what works for us, so we feel proud, so we keep doing it. I hope that makes sense, but that's That's kind of how I felt. I grew up a lot different than the parents are trying to coach the kids now. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I still think that we need to let our kids with CF fight every day. They're not dumb. They know what they have. Let them fight it. The quicker you can let them own it, the better they will do.
Yeah, agree. And expose them to multiple sports like you were exposed
Absolutely.
with
and let them find their path.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not everyone's going to run a marathon or an Ironman. Or
No,
surf.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. This is a pretty cool question. How have any of us and you guys dealt with osteo or ortho issues as they've aged? So osteopenia, osteoporosis, which is common in the CF world, especially as we're now old.
Nothing for me yet. I'm good so far.
Cool.
No, me neither.
I've had osteopenia. I have that, but.
So I have pretty bad osteoporosis. I'm showing you my back now. You can see that.
There you go. Oh, I got that.
So and that's sitting up straight. So you know how, buddy over there, you love surfing. I love water sports, and I tried to surf. I cannot surf because my back is so curved. My head is in the board, and I can't look up because my back is so curved. And I really have to fight this and fight it hard because coughing is just pulling me over. And I go so hard, I cough so hard, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I'm getting low bone density because of it too now. So it's been an issue for sure. It's just something I have to constantly in my mind try to fight.
Yeah, let me sit up straight. I'm thinking of Julie Destler now and her thoracic spine exercises. Here's another question that's awesome. It says, you all are personal heroes of mine. Thank you so much for inspiring those of us with CF to keep pushing ourselves to achieve more. My question for you is, how do you set goals for yourself and not get discouraged if you're not able to reach them in a time frame you want, or if you feel lousy? How do you motivate yourself to work out? So if you're in that situation, if you're feeling lousy, is it more of an idea of that any movement is better than nothing, or do you give your body time to rest so you can get back to really hammering it?
I think any movement is good movement, because when you're moving your lungs, that is good for getting rid of the mucus. The times where doctors have been most concerned about me are times when I'm motionless. So when I had Achilles surgery, they were quite concerned that I would get sick if I was late, had my foot in a cast, to the extent that I ended up going to Sweden for my Achilles surgery because they would do local anesthetic as opposed to general anesthesia, which the CF clinic was against. And the surgeon in Sweden would have me there. I would not be in a cast. Like no matter what procedure he did, he believed in me continuing to move. So my doctors are most concerned when I'm not moving. So I remember doing 2-hour runs where I would cough every minute. It was, and I was still racing as a pro, and I would just do them. And, I reframed it every single time. So I just said to myself, this is high altitude training. I've got no oxygen. This is fantastic. I don't have to go to Denver. I'm here in Ontario, Canada, and it's like I'm at 5,000 feet. And, so I would kind of just reframe it as, imagine how good I'm going to be when my lungs are healthier. And, yes, there's that, there's that line where you're going to fight, your immune system's going to be suppressed. Certainly 2 hours probably wasn't the smartest thing, but movement is better than non-movement every single time, whether it be to move your lungs and move your body, your self-esteem, giving yourself that 30 to 45 minutes of feeling normal for that particular day. And it can just be a walk. A walk is just such an incredible gift that you can give to yourself. So I would say, and in terms of goals, we're going to be sidelined. I keep training logs. I've kept training logs for over 20 years, and I include in them how I feel. And now more than ever, I include my health in them with CF. And it seems like every year, every time I go on antibiotics, I do have a step back. I don't care now because I'm not racing, but there was a step back. It took time to get back to running fast or biking fast or whatever. But that's part of the package. That's part of the self-correction in a sense. So, I just would accept that, to be honest. And there's a point where performance has to take a backseat to health. Healthy and fit are not the same thing. Because you're fit doesn't mean you're healthy. And you know, you've got health is important. So sometimes the fitness has to take a step back.
That's awesome. And I'm going to give you a plug right now for An Unlikely Champion, which is Lisa's book. You guys can check it out. If we do a follow-up email to everyone who participated or whatever, we will put that link in there for everyone.
You.
Pretty cool stuff.
I put it in the chat. It's in the chat right now to everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I will send it out, and I'll send out information about CF Coach and anything else that any of the presenters want to promote, for sure.
Awesome. Great.
Awesome.
So I don't know if this will be the final question, but we'll see what comes. So this one says, Marten, I think you're going to like this one. My son is 6 years old with CF. He loves running, but as a father of CF, so a father that he has CF, I push him maybe a lot. He was doing 2 kilometer runs before the pandemic, but is it too much? What would be the limit?
There
6
is
years
no
old. That's what I knew you were going to say that. Until you do, that's your limit.
No,
or at least
I
you coach people. What would you suggest?
Oh, I mean, I think the most important thing is how he got to the 2K. As long as he gradually built up to it, and that it was kind of fun and not done, you know, I mean, at that age, you want it to be fun. Like maybe it's a walk, run. Keep it fun. Walk, run. And like it can be done in the park around like almost little soccer drills, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think as long as it's fun, a game of tag, like there's incredible runs you could do if you're just playing tag with your kids. So yeah, you know, like not buying them, say, a $700 watch, you know, like the GPS.
You buy that for me, though, Pops.
Yeah, that's right. Let's not tie into it too quickly. But yeah, I think the more, obviously, the dad is a great role model, which is fantastic. And as long as his feet are good and he's healthy and he's eating and all those things are nicely progressing, I don't think there's a problem.
I'll definitely encourage him and keep pushing him.
Yeah, keep pushing him, encouraging him. But I think one thing today brought together like some phenomenal athletes, like world record holders, champions, crazy adventurers, people who have changed their life with exercise. I think it's easy for parents, especially of young kids, to be like, okay, I want my kid to do this and just jump on it. But there's a progression, there's a healthy progression that parents have to take with that. I mean, I get asked all the time, how do I get my kids to do this? I want them to do this. How do you get my kid to run 10 miles? I'm like, well, you got to start slow, make sure they like it, ease into it, talk to your doctors, look at salt, look at diet. There's so much into it. And I think it's all of us that were part of this today set these really cool examples and inspire people. But then there's the reality of like bringing it into your own personal CF story and not just jumping right at it, but really taking a measured approach.
Agree.
What else we got? Patrick, do you want to add anything before we sign off for the afternoon?
No, not really. Just maybe one little thing when we talked before about setting goals, right? And this may not how everyone else feels, but when I set myself goals, whether that's in regards to fitness or anything else in life, I usually tend to set very high goals and then set little milestones, you know, because I don't think reaching a goal is what makes us happy, but I think being on the way to reach that goal is really good. So I personally have to go to be a world surf champion, you know, but I probably will never be that one. But by training and doing, you know, like little heats and stuff, that's something that makes me happy. So it's not just setting a big and high goal or for your son running 10 kilometers. It's just, it's a little milestones. And like they said, it has to be fun.
I agree.
Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm really not the running kind of guy. So, and it just, I know it's super healthy, but I couldn't do it. So
we challenge you now. We all challenge you to a marathon. Great advice, man. I like the idea of the stepping stone with like you have a plan A, but then you've got B, C, D, E, and no matter which one you hit, you'll be happy with. Well, maybe see, this is one of the last questions is, does anyone have any fear or PTSD around exercise and CF issues? If so, how do they push through it?
Yeah, maybe say something to this. Oh, sorry, Martin.
No, you go ahead.
No, actually, it's a bit ironic because I almost drowned once, and somehow that triggered severe PTSD a couple of years later, and I wasn't really able to go back to the sea and do surfing, right? And whenever I got close to the sea, and whenever in other situations, I subconsciously felt like I'm drowning, and I got nausea all the time, and I was really feeling sick. And at first, I really wasn't sure what was going on. And it also took me a couple of months to actually get past this. But again, I saw it as an opportunity, right? It's something along my way that I had to learn. And I just pushed myself to go into water again. I pushed myself to in the beginning, watch surfing videos instead of surfing myself. And then in the end, I just tried it. And I went to the sea and go surfing lots of times. And I just felt, sick and not really good. But you're getting used to it. You just need the right methods for this, and also the right support for this. And I think there you really can push a bit harder, because nothing happens actually. It's just a subconscious reaction, but nothing serious is happening, right? So I just pushed myself in, and then at some day it was normal again.
Wow, cool, man. Good job. Keep going back and trying. That's awesome. Cool. Anybody else have any issues with PTSD or fear related with their exercise and CF?
I think that after when my lung function dropped quite a bit, and I know this is the norm for Martin, but for me to have, when I had a 55% lung function, that was a big shock to me, because I usually ran at 90 to 100. And after I was recovering, I had a real fear of being out of breath, which is ironic since I'd pretty much spent 20 years of my life as a professional athlete out of breath. But I was like, wow, I can't breathe. And then, it's ironic though, in the same sense, because it's by exercise that I kind of know where my health is. When I remember the first, that year when I was getting sick, I remember saying to my CF doctor, I said, I can't do butterfly in the pool. I can't, it's too hard for me. And it's never been hard for me. And sure enough, my lung function was down and I was unwell. And then another time I was swimming in the pool, my arm was going numb. And I never, again, I'm pretty bad about pain threshold thing. Like I'll let things go. I raced with a burst appendix once, which, not the best idea. But anyways, my arm was going numb in the pool, and I went to the doctor, and it turned out I had a collapsed lung. So it's usually when I'm exercising that I discover that there's something wrong. And so for me, when I get out of breath, I get really nervous that, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Like what? And yet it's my calling card to get healthy. So it's just a trigger for me, for sure, of it's time to, there's probably something wrong. You probably need antibiotics or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that I know I'm sick when I can't exercise or train like I normally do. Like that's when I figure it out too. So
yeah.
Well, this was awesome. Kat, what do you think? I think we did pretty good here.
I think we did really well. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have so many screenshots of compliments that I will send you guys for sure. So
thank you.
It really was impactful for a lot of people. Yep.
Well, great to meet everybody. You're all amazing, and I'm keeping role models. I've learned a lot, and I salute you, Martin. I salute you, Patrick, for all that you do, and thank you for making a difference in people's lives.
Right on.
Yeah, keep it up, guys.
Likewise.
Yep, all of you, for sure.
Thank you for
It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.